This boy loves his life. Every day his friends at school give him face massages. At home his uncles are always shouting at him, saying that he is an incredible boy that 100% deserves to live. When he goes to his room after his stepfather gives him a chance to train his abdominal muscles, his lovely stepbrother suddenly spills a drink onto the floor, saying that the boy now has incredible tasks to accomplish. He approaches our boy and asks if he has any idea how kind he is. Our guy is moved beyond imagination, but he is too shy and does not want to show all his love, so he just clenches his fist. When he goes to school, there's a beautiful flower on top of his desk with even more beautiful messages written for him. Everyone comments on how he is not a loser who deserves to die and how incredible his life must be. When the teacher arrives and sees all that incredible handwriting, tells our boy that he is really blessed by his friends. Right after that, he hits his back against the wall. That is because one of his better colleagues came up with some new full-body massage techniques this time. Our boy thinks about using his strength to stop so much love being shown to him, because those guys reminded him of his adorable stepbrother. But he decides to accept the good deeds and gets once again the chance to train his abdominal muscles. Even his head is getting some foot massage. While everyone has fun in this wholesome environment, his cheeks are flushed, his neck is getting that chiropractor treatment, and when his cell phone falls to the ground, a guy worried about internet addiction instantly breaks it to save our boy from his dopaminergic system, being overloaded with dancing e-girls and Mamoru videos. But the moment he is about to show him the brand of his new shoes on full force, this bully appears and holds the shoulders of the wholesome friend. Everyone recognizes the bully as Nishi, and the middle of the girl's thighs are suddenly slippery. Our boy best friend is about to ask Nishi what he wants, when one of the massage boys tries to slightly scratch his head with a baseball bat. But Nishi is a trained gentleman, so not only does he easily block the attack with his back, he also delivers a free dental care to the dude's mouth, who instantly falls to the floor from such unexpected kindness. Nishi the panty creamer then kindly asks everyone to go rest, and the trio goes away sad because they could not give our boy the full body massage he deserves. Nishi sighs and talks to our boy asking why he does nothing when others show love. He should try starting massaging everyone too, but our guy just stands and walks away, just replying that Nishi knows nothing about him. The dude though is impressed. This body receives such an intense massage but still walks away like nothing had happened. That could only be possible if he was evading every single movement at the last second to avoid the pleasures of the care. But nah, that would be impossible, he concludes. Later, our boy is back at the rooftop observing that lovely school. His biggest problem is that since his cell phone broke, he cannot really watch a Mamoru video. The happiness from being free of that addiction is so intense that he starts climbing the fence, and suddenly he opens his arms in pure joy just thinking about flying without a parachute. But that is when his perfect life gets turned upside down, with strange numerical pillars that appear from the sky and start raining down at the city. Every Mamoru watching gadget began to electrify their hands, making every student lose their grip, and that is when the happy life of our boy began to shatter. Down below he heard screams, and from the cell phones the numbers began to distort and create form, and all of a sudden a goblin mutated from inside of it. Before one could understand, every student was running for their lives. Blood began to pour while our boy was just watching it all from above. A goblin rushed and crushed its first skull. Creatures were freely roaming the school, and the protagonist was watching it all from above. Lifeless bodies dropping, calling for their families, and a mountain of students was stacked in a few minutes. But our boy that had that incredible life before was sad, saying things like, "Yeah, I was ready to jump, but I am blessed with this incredible view." Seeing girls getting free clothing changes and guys being eaten as a whole by spiders was indeed a beautiful sight. No more funny games. Now he was happy that those fuckers who looked down on him so fucking much were all dying like the trash they were. That served them perfectly. All of them could go to hell. His life was shit. His parents were gone. Everyone in this society was already a monster, and his brother even worse, so none of it mattered. He did not care. He was crying tears of happiness. But then he heard something breaking behind him, and when he looked back, a green dwarf appeared carrying a war trophy and a bloody machete. Our boy thought for a second that this could be a dream, but no way. The smell and fear were too real. The dwarf lunged at him, drooling, and tried to vertically cleave our boy, who dodged at the last second. Seeing that he was trembling out of fear but knew he had to act, as his brother told him to just die like the trash he is, he clenched his teeth and said, "Not like that." He grabbed a pipe and blocked the attack, shouting he would not die miserably like that. The green dwarf kept striking and he kept blocking, feeling the throbbing pain. And when he thought he was about to push the creature off, the monster once again took the upper hand. But in that second, everything went monochrome. For a second he felt the flow state, his concentration heightened to the limit, and his body control hitting perfection. All of that just to kick the goblin in the balls. But props to him, because that was all he needed to take the lead and smash the creature to a pulp. Seeing the dead dwarf, he vomited, but recomposed himself and shouted a pure emotional roar. His life up until now was trash, and he did not want to live. But for some reason right now he did not feel like dying. But unfortunately that was when his lids got heavy, and everything went to black. But then a voice tells him to snap out of it, and the shock nearly makes him jump. It's Nishi. Relieved to see our boy in one piece. He says the injury to the protagonist's head looked so bad he was sure he was done for. Our boy looks completely wrecked, while Nishi tells him to take it easy. But when he looks outside, he realizes the disaster has spread everywhere. The whole city is hell. Then they hear some sobbing and find the rest of the class cowering. Funny how the tough guys are pissing themselves now. Kujo is in shock while the teacher holds her and the guy says he'll protect everyone. The PE teacher pretends to be comforting Sakura, but the guy is blatantly checking out the girl's assets. The others already know what it's like to be devoured by the eyes of this so-called hard-working man. But our boy ends up getting distracted when he sees the huge barricade over in the corner. Nishi explains they threw that protection together in a hurry, and that everyone ran up to the roof to escape the monsters. Lots of injured people, while the building behind them is turning into a barbecue. All that junk is the only thing separating them from death. Nishi is blaming himself like crazy, because there were people begging to be let in before everything got sealed off. The kid is on the verge of having a breakdown. Just look at that mangled hand trying to cling to life while the goblins tear through the stairs, pure concentrated despair. The teacher explains that there's no way to open it without letting the monsters in too. The poor people outside see them through the gap and beg for help. Neshi still tries to argue that there are people alive out there, but the hands on the other side are already losing strength. Desperate screams echo from behind the rubble, and Neshi is having a total meltdown. Bro is in shock. He says that deep down he just wanted to survive, and that his survival instinct took over. But then our boy says it's not his fault. While staring at the dead goblin, Nishi asks if the protagonist was the one who soloed that thing and says he's amazing before admitting that he, on the other hand, completely froze up. Nishi laments not having the MC's courage while Rakuto keeps that same blank expression. The teacher yells for everyone to gather around and everyone gets startled, as he tells them to analyze the situation from the moment the monsters appeared. Sakura tries to use her phone, but the battery is just dead. Another kid says his shut off too, and the tough guys confirm that everyone's phones are offline, even Nishi's, while the protagonist is still broken. With the screen completely shattered, the teacher complains that they can't even call for help. Nishi asks what happened, and our boy remembers that the monsters came out of the phones and now the devices have all simply shut down. He stares at the piece of e-waste in his hands and realizes no monster came out of his, precisely because it was broken. The teacher tells everyone to stay quiet to keep order, and assures them that the police or the army will come rescue everyone. But Rakuto immediately tells it like it is. The guy is talking nonsense. The teacher is left speechless by the protagonist's mockery as he explains that if the monsters came from phones, the whole city is already doomed. Everyone is completely shaken, while he adds that the whole world is probably like this, not just Japan. Sakura is devastated. Some people are already starting to lose it, but Nishi says that if they want to survive, they need to get out and find a safe place. Takeda couldn't handle hearing the truth and immediately steps up to Rikuto for giving orders. Look at that bastard's little grin. He still thinks he owns the school. He grabs the kid by the collar and starts yelling in his face, but Rikuto doesn't even blink, and that emptiness in his eyes throws the bully off. He calls our boy trash again, and the rest of his gang agrees and tells him to know his place. But then Nishi steps in to try to calm things down. Sakura tries to play mediator, asking everyone to get along, but Takeda won't stop, asking if Rikuto is so scared he's lost his voice. Nothing but silence. The bully is feeling like he owns the world and thinks the protagonist is nothing compared to real monsters. He demands an answer at the top of his lungs, and our guy finally says that he's a pain in the ass. The people around them are stunned by the audacity. Takeda completely snaps on the spot and cocks his fist, yelling who the kid thinks he's talking to. Nishi tries to shout for them to stop, but Rikuto has already handled the problem himself. With a quick movement, he shifts his body weight and pins the bully to the ground with a perfect arm lock. Takeda's face is crushed against the concrete, bleeding and completely confused. Nishi is utterly shocked by the kid's technique, and the people around them can only watch the former leader's humiliation. Takeda screams in pain, telling the extra to let him go right now. But the protagonist just lets out a sigh, finding the whole situation ridiculous. He wonders how he was ever afraid of someone so mediocre. Takeda keeps yelling that he's going to kill him, but Rikuto keeps the pressure on. With those dead fish eyes and that psychopath look on his face, the bully is practically ready to beg for mercy on the floor. Then Nishi yells that that's enough, and pulls the protagonist away before the other guy's arm gets wrecked, while thinking the kid is insane, and wondering if this is really the same guy who used to get beaten up. Meanwhile, everyone around them is completely baffled. Takeda, still on the ground, is still swearing he'll kill the protagonist. But Nishi tells him to shut up because this isn't the time for petty fighting, while the loser keeps grumbling in the corner. Nishi asks Rikuto to let it go for now, and he agrees, since fighting right now is a waste of time. The bully can't accept that he got wrecked by an extra. Then Nishi looks at the teacher to get the conversation back on track, and the guy is so sweaty with fear that he can only nod. Nishi sums up the situation. There's no food here, and there's no telling when rescue will come, and he also says straight up that maybe no one is coming for them. Nishi says they need to secure food and water, and Rikuto adds that weapons would be a good idea too. Sakura timidly raises her hand and asks if there's any place that's actually safe. Our boy says it's straight. They need to go into the building and see if there's a way to escape. But then Seitu Shinjiro shows up, a kid who's against the idea because it's way too dangerous. He insists the plan is to stay put and wait for rescue. Professor Oyama agrees with Rikuto and says they at least have to check the hallway. Everyone starts panicking, asking who the hell would be crazy enough to go into the monster's den. And the cowardly teacher immediately points at Rikuto and Takeda to go scout ahead. The protagonist just accepts it in silence. Takeda is furious about the order, He tells the teacher to lead by example, but the coward says he needs to protect the one staying behind. Even the girls join in, telling them to man up. The guy is blinded by rage at the hypocrisy. But while they waste time yelling, our guy is already at the door, ready to face the slaughter. Even the tough guy is left speechless by the kid's coldness. He asks if Rikuto is serious, and the MC explains that staying there doing nothing will only make things worse. He simply refuses to die. The girls are stunned by his aura, while Nishi stares at the protagonist and lets out a little smile. He grabs the guitar case and says he's coming to look for survivors. The teacher freaks out, worried about being blamed if the golden boy dies, and the girls beg him not to go. But Nishi can only think about what a hypocrite that old man is. He says he's glad to go with Rikuto, while Takeda, the chihuahua, trembles with shame. Nishi is laughing inside at Takeda, straight up calling the guy a chihuahua, but he explains that the mission is dangerous and their chances of dying are extremely high. Then he smiles and says he's just like our protagonist, and the two agree. They both have reasons to keep breathing and won't make it easy for the monsters. Total focus. Rikuto swears there's no way he's dying in a dump like this, and flashes that smile of someone ready for chaos as they walk. Nishi says the protagonist seems like someone he can trust, but then he realizes something and asks what our guy's name is, and the kid finally introduces himself as Kurogane Rikuto. Nishi introduces himself all cool and handsome, surprised the protagonist doesn't know who he is, but Rikuto just goes, okay, and the guy cracks up at the kid's coldness. With the school burning behind them, the pact is sealed. Now they're partners. They make their way through the rubble, and Rikuto gives the signal to move forward straight into the lion's den. The hallway looks like something out of a horror movie, with bodies scattered all over the floor. Neshi is breaking out in a cold sweat, but Rikuto tells him straight that this isn't a dream, and the blonde is still puzzled by the silence, with no monsters anywhere nearby while the protagonist figures they may have gone hunting in the city. Rikuto explains that since classes had already ended, there wasn't much prey left around there, so the monsters went hunting in the city. Neshi is even a little shaken hearing our guy talk with that much coldness, but suddenly he hears a crack coming from up ahead. He tells Rikuto to stop immediately, and the two listen carefully to see if any more noise is coming. The tension rises, then they sneak a careful peek and come face to face with a buff goblin holding a club. The protagonist asks if they can take it, and Nishi confirms this one they can handle on their own. Nishi takes a deep breath and accepts it, and starts opening that guitar case, revealing that the instrument is actually an elite bow. The golden boy immediately takes a firing stance, drawing the string with a professional calm, and the arrow shoots down the hallway like lightning, striking the monster straight in the chest. The creature is left stunned as it feels the metal sink in, while Rikuto immediately takes advantage of the opening and comes charging in from behind, and the goblin lets out a bizarre scream of pain. Nishi instantly goes on alert at the creature's scream, but the buff goblin is no joke, and immediately gathers momentum, leaping high into the air to bring the club down on the archer. But our boy is faster and steps in front with the metal pipe, landing a perfect blow. The monster is thrown backward while Nishi watches the creature tumbling down the hallway. The creature tries to get back up, completely battered. Look at the nasty look on that goblin's face. Rikuto doesn't give the creature time to react, and brings the metal pipe down with years of pent-up rage, leaving the weapon completely soaked in blue blood. The monster blacks out, and Nishi says Rikuto is as brutal as he imagined. The kid immediately asks if more of them are coming, and our guy confirms the area is clear, praising their teamwork. But Rikuto knows that was just the warm-up. He remembers there are giant dragons out there that no army can handle.
Nishi looks at the body and says, "This goblin is just a low-level enemy, like one of those tutorial monsters you kill without any effort." Rikuto agrees these creatures are only the beginning, and reminds him that the world is now infested with orcs, slimes, and every kind of abomination. Nishi tries to laugh it off, but looking at our guy's hand, it won't stop trembling. He says it straight. In a game this would be easy, but here their lives are on the line.
While wiping the blood off the pipe, the protagonist remembers they don't have cheats or magic, and that they're just two ordinary humans. But Nishi doesn't buy that and says Rikuto is different, and he asks if the kid ever had a master, which makes the MC freeze up. The protagonist's expression turns dark on the spot as he remembers getting beaten with a bamboo sword. His asshole brother Kaido used to beat the kid mercilessly in the dojo, and even enjoyed his suffering. Rikuto closes his eyes to erase the memory and says he never had any master at all. Nishi asks why he never fought back against the bullies while the school burns outside. They pass through destroyed classrooms and hallways full of bodies, noticing that the 6th floor is bizarrely silent. Rikuto explains that the floor is empty because it only has rehearsal rooms, and Nishi agrees that makes sense, but warns that things are about to get seriously intense. The protagonist decides to set expectations straight to find out if the goal is still to assess the situation and see if they can escape. He says it straight that the important thing is getting out alive with the information, and adds that if necessary, he'll leave Nishi behind without thinking twice, and tells the guy to do the same if things go south. Nishi takes it well and says that in an emergency there are no hard feelings, and Rikuto even lets out a little smile. Nishi comments that he acts all tough, but deep down he's not really like that. The golden boy scratches his ear with that little smile of someone who has already figured the protagonist out, but a scream for help cuts through the silence, and Rikuto freezes instantly. The kid takes off flying toward the sound. ignoring Nishi, who yells for him to wait. The archer notices the guy isn't even listening and cracks up because the MC said he'd abandon the others, yet he was the first to run to help. Nishi is practically losing a lung trying to keep up with the protagonist, while the two of them rush down the silent hallway. But the silence ends when they come face to face with this absolute tree trunk of a leg. It's a giant ogre simply wiping the floor with the smaller goblins. Kotone watches everything in shock and thinks she needs to help, but the poor girl is shaking like a leaf. But inside the room, the sound is pure despair, with the goblins being as low level as possible with the girls. The floor is already covered with people who never stood a chance, and the creature is already on top of Sakura. Good lord, look at how stacked this girl is, but this is really not the time for that. Koatone is standing there falling apart from fear and tries to convince herself that she has to save Misaki, who is being cornered by a goblin that has no interest in talking, and the creature attacks, splattering the floor with blood. The girl completely panics, covering her ears and praying this is all a dream, and starts apologizing in utter desperation, feeling like the worst person in the world for not being able to react. Outside, the school seems peaceful, and she remembers when Rakuto was getting beaten, and she just stood there watching. In the flashback, the bullies were humiliating Rakuto, and Kotone watched it all, knowing she needed to step in, and even tries to open her mouth to tell them to stop, but the asshole drives a kick straight into the MC's face, infuriating. The girl could only tremble and apologize to him in her head, until Saito touches her shoulder and tells her class is about to start and pulls her by the hand while Rakuto is left there on the ground, and the two of them just move on. In the present, night has already swallowed the school. Kotone wakes from her blackout and finds herself locked inside a locker. She remembers Misaki while hearing slimy noises outside and wonders how long she was out. She fumbles for her phone in the dark, but the locker suddenly starts shaking, and she holds her breath in terror. And then suddenly total silence. You can feel her desperation from here. Out of nowhere, a beam of light cuts through the ceiling and reveals that her hiding place is done for. 3 goblins are already there surrounding her, while she looks to the side and sees Misaki's body. The poor girl is completely cornered, and the creature is already yanking her by the hair, while she begs for mercy. But the monster only lets out a roar right in her face, and the creatures are already going after her uniform. Good lord, look at how stacked this girl is. She screams in desperation, and out of nowhere, everything explodes in light. Out of breath, she begs for any kind of help. But the monsters only laugh. She closes her eyes, expecting the end, when a giant club suddenly smashes the goblin's head apart, making the poor girl open her eyes without understanding anything and come face to face with the ogre clearing the area. The creature looks like a demon with those red eyes. She's shaking more than jelly. Even the other goblins run for their lives in fear of that beast. The ogre is surrounded by goblins and starts wiping them out with that giant club in a total massacre. Kotone can only watch the carnage, paralyzed, while the monster breathes hot air into her face and she shrivels up in terror. On the floor above, Rikuto and Nishi fly down the stairs while the sound of despair echoes through the building. But the ogre has already grabbed Kotone by the waist and is carrying her away like some kind of trophy. The ogre is dragging a bunch of tied-up goblins around like trash and holds Kotone as she cries and begs to be let go, but he ignores her and keeps walking. The poor girl is so shocked that she simply blacks out. Hidden in the corner, Rikuto and Nishi watch everything, and Nishi is pale with fear. He shrinks back behind the pillar and wonders whether his arrows will even scratch the skin of that war tank. The protagonist says that his bad feeling was right, and remembers that the upper floor was way too empty for a reason. The ogre starts casually walking away, dragging the goblins like they were trash bags, and Nishi realizes that they're the prey of an elite monster. The archer is in shock watching Kotone being taken away, but Rikuto starts walking, and Nishi tries to hold the kid back, but the protagonist says he's going to save her, because the girl is still alive. Nishi asks if he wants to die or if he's trying to play hero in the middle of this carnage. Rikuto looks his partner in the eye and admits that before he just wanted to jump off the building. But seeing the end up close changed everything, and now saving the girl is what proves he's alive. Nishi is outraged and asks if dying to an ogre is his big life plan. The MC doesn't even care and tells his partner to go back alone. The boy is locked in. He remembers the bullies calling him trash while his family photo is left behind in the dirt. No one was on his side, and he was alone against the world. Takeda used to say he was already dead and should act like it while calling the kid incompetent. But Rikuto says he won't be one of the living dead anymore, even if it costs him his life. Then Nishi tells him to wait a second and says he has a little sister who goes to another school, which leaves the MC confused, but the archer explains that he can't die and leave his sister alone in the world. Nishi clenches his fist, breaking into a cold sweat, because if he runs away now, he'd never be able to face his sister if she were in the same situation. He admits he's scared to death, but decides that the two of them are going to save the girl no matter what. The archer asks if the protagonist is ready to do something stupid for selfish reasons, and Rikuto gives a crooked smile. The kid says it's straight. Nishi's not right in the head either. Now the problem is how to face that tank without dying instantly. And the protagonist says that if Nishi fights alongside him, he already has a plan in mind. Rikuto tells Nishi to pay attention while Kotone wakes up in the middle of the nightmare. She's tied to a pillar, and good lord, look at the size of this survivor's assets. The ogre even left some goblins tied up there as a food supply. The poor girl is in total shock. The monster is right there in front of her, relaxing by the fire and chewing on a human head. Meanwhile, our boys launch their attack and Nishi calls out to the protagonist to confirm the plan. Nishi thinks our boy has completely lost it, while Kotone accepts that the end has come. She looks around and only sees the shadows of those who've already turned to smoke, and the ogre is still there, chewing the remains like it's an afternoon snack. The girl imagines her own body turning into barbecue over that fire, and falls into total despair, crying and begging not to die. But then something goes whizzing past the monster's ear. The creature stops dinner on the spot, sensing danger, and raises its club, ready to crush whoever interrupted its meal. Kotone hears a noise and freezes instantly, and in her panic, she loses her balance, falling straight to the ground, pillar and all. The creature is on top of her in an instant while she begs to be untied, but the ogre lifts the pillar like it's nothing but a twig, carrying the poor girl toward the flames. Total despair. But the monster stops when it senses a presence in the dark. Our boy has finally appeared. Kotone's in complete shock, seeing Rikuto there looking like a different person. He just tells her to close her eyes and that's it. She can't even process it. The ogre tosses her aside and focuses on our boy and pulls the giant club off its back and comes charging in to crush him. But the protagonist is smart and grabs the fire extinguisher right away and blasts the creature in the face with the spray, blinding the monster instantly. The MC kicks the extinguisher aside and runs to free Kotone, telling her to stay quiet. She can't understand why he came back to save her while he tries to cut the ropes with a little knife, but the damn thing is way too tough and won't cut at all, and carrying her together with that giant pillar is out of the question. So Rikuto immediately gets the backup plan ready. Ho starts banging hard on the metal pipe, making the sound echo 3 times down the corridor. Nishi hears the signal and immediately realizes things have gotten worse for them. Nishi remembers our boy's crazy plan and runs down the corridor, giving it everything he's got, even though he's terrified of screwing up. But the ogre is already huffing right behind them and lets out a roar so foul you can practically feel its breath from here. The creature comes at them with pure rage while Kotone screams and Rikuto dodges. Total focus. He faces the giant with the pipe gripped tight, knowing that being off by even a millimeter means game over. Rikuto knows that one slip-up means a coffin, while Kotone screams his name and he enters the zone, raising the pipe to meet the club head-on. Incredible precision. He redirects the weight of the blow straight into the ground, which cracks apart from the impact. The ogre is thrown off, and the MC lets out a smile, feeling his muscle memory return, and now the creature is truly screwed. The ogre is raging and roaring in pure hatred while Rikuto gets ready to counterattack. Instead of facing brute force head-on, he just redirects the club's trajectory, making the monster slam it into the ground. In the same motion, he strikes the beast's foot, making it let out a howl of pain. The protagonist remembers his father now and realizes those kendo lessons stayed with him ever since his training days at the dojo. Rikuto silently thanks the old man while Kotone is left speechless by his skill. He realizes the monster is nothing but brute strength and zero technique, while the beast snorts in pure rage. The ogre raises the club with all its might to crush him, but the MC is already prepared and dodges the blow with absurd ease, leaving the beast completely baffled. The metal pipe cracks against the monster's arm and our boy is already circling to find the next opening. The beast keeps charging in with pure brutality and Rikuto realizes the attacks are totally predictable, with no feints at all, just brute force. The ogre is furious at being made a fool of and even backs off a little, confused about what's going on. Kotone is stunned watching the fight, but she realizes our boy is at his limit with his hand shaking so much the metal pipe is almost slipping out. To make matters worse, the monster is a tank and barely feels a thing, so going head-on now would be suicide. Nishi is running for it, and Rikuto tries to lure the beast, which snorts in pure rage, but out of nowhere the monster turns around and with bizarre strength lifts the pillar with Kotone still on it. And the protagonist freezes on the spot, cursing out loud while the ogre brings the blow down to crush him. The impact makes the school shake and the classroom turns into pure rubble. Rikuto dodges being crushed by a hair while the ogre comes after him, drooling. Poor Kotone being used like a hammer. She remembers a sunny day at the park where 2 boys were making her life miserable. But then a little boy showed up to step in. It was little Rikuto protecting the girl. And now she cries in guilt for having turned her back on him. Outside, Nishi takes position and thinks the protagonist is a monster at dodging. Rikuto is at his limit and can't hide his exhaustion anymore, while Nishi gets ready in the hallway to lure the beast into a straight line. He's focused and says he'll end this right here. The ogre keeps up the chase in pure fury and brings the pillar down to try to crush the protagonist. The MC still manages to block the blow with the pipe, but it's clear the strain is way too much. His hand is giving out and his grip is gone. The beast takes advantage of the opening to leap in with everything it has and sends our boy flying with a brutal swing of the club. Sent flying with full force while his partner watches in shock, seeing our boy hurled toward death until he crashes onto the floor. Nishi panics, remembering he'd only have one chance, but the problem is the angle is terrible with the beast snorting right there and the distance being awful to land the perfect shot. Nishi is breaking out in a cold sweat and almost loses the arrow in desperation, but Rikuto tells him to stop. The kid is completely battered but gets back up and says he needs to be a few meters closer. Kotone can only cry. The ogre moves in to finish the job. Coughing up blood, his knee gives out face to face with the monster. I would have had a heart attack right there. Rikuto can barely stay on his feet while the ogre looks like a mountain of flesh in front of him. The beast lets out a roar loud enough to deafen anyone and prepares the final blow. Nishi only hears the sound and freezes. Katone begs him to run and save himself, but the protagonist's gaze is on another level. She cries in guilt, saying she doesn't deserve this. And then we go back to the past, to the day he was getting beaten down by delinquents, while she just watched. She was there hiding, almost working up the courage to tell them to stop, but then Saito suddenly shows up and startles her. He starts lecturing her right away, saying she can't get involved in this kind of thing by herself, and that she just needs to do what he says. While Rikuto gets kicked around in the background, she just lowers her head and walks away. In the present, she's sobbing uncontrollably for having been such a coward. But the ogre doesn't care about drama and charges in with bloodlust in its eyes to finish the job. The beast is so enraged it's practically grinding its teeth apart and uses Katone like a club to crush Rikuto once and for all. But our boy realizes the club has lost its power and knows this is the moment. He goes all in and slams the iron pipe right into the middle of its weapon. The impact sends the MC flying, but he lands with that little grin of someone who knows the plan worked. The ogre loses its balance and ends up letting go of the girl, who falls to the ground all battered up. The ogre quickly regains its balance and charges at Rikuto, and Katone falls into despair, screaming for the boy to run. But he just stays there, sprawled on the floor and unresponsive. The beast comes in drooling, ready to crush his head, but Rikuto only says he got the perfect distance for his partner. And at the far end of the hallway, Nishi is already in sniper position. With this angle and this distance, he never misses. And the monster even notices the movement, but it's already too late. That makes it way too easy. And then he fires the special arrow, slicing through the air straight toward the target. Bullseye, right in the beast's eye. But to understand that hit, we need to go back 10 minutes. Rikuto shows up holding a nasty-looking syringe, and Nishi realizes it was Sakura who got him the item. The kid explains it's 100% alcohol, pure lab-grade ethanol. She handed him the stuff before the expedition started. The plan is to attach it to the arrow and inject it straight into the monster's bloodstream. Nishi asks if it'll work, and the MC just confirms it. Like, if tequila can knock us down, that stuff's gonna fry the ogre. The beast is done for. Nishi thinks the plan is just theory, because a needle like that wouldn't get through the beast's skin. But Rikuto tells it like it is, and tells him to aim straight for the eye. Nishi asks how he can be so sure, and the protagonist explains that the monster's eye should be sensitive just like ours. The plan was simple. Rikuto would act as bait, and Nishi would finish it off. Back in the present, the beast is screaming in agony with the arrow buried in its eyeball, while Nishi can only call his partner insane. The plan was risky, but the signal of 3 knocks was Nishi's cue, and he hit dead center, earning our guy 10 points. The beast can feel the ethanol frying its brain. Rikuto is sprawled on the floor, just watching the damage. Katone can't believe the mob character actually saved her. The monster tries to rip out the arrow in pure desperation, but its legs are already giving out, and it drops the club. The protagonist realizes the chemical poison is taking effect. The beast is almost out cold, but it lets out one last roar of pure hatred and tries to crush our boy with whatever strength it has left. Nishi panics and screams for his partner, but the ogre is blind and swinging completely in the dark. It ends up throwing a punch into empty air that blows up the wall and leaves a massive hole in the hallway. Look at the size of that crater. The monster is on its last legs, panting and directionless. Even so, it still tries to throw itself at the MC, but Rikuto already has blood in his eyes and decides now's the time to settle this with his bare hands. The beast roars in fury while our boy jumps onto its back and hangs on with everything he's got, telling himself he only needs to hold on a little longer. But the ogre is still possessed like a demon, and Rikuto realizes things are about to get ugly. Nishi has no idea how to help while the protagonist jumps with the ogre and the two of them fall. The monster lets out a howl loud enough to wake the whole city. At last, the beast hits the floor and the MC just stays there, completely battered. He and Nishi collapse from exhaustion while the ogre turns into wall decor. Katone watches the two of them from a distance and cries in relief when she sees they're alive. Nishi looks at his partner in disbelief and asks if he's crazy for coming up with that plan, and if he wasn't scared, Nishi would miss the target. But the protagonist just smiles, remembering he's a national champion. Nishi says the MC is crazy as hell and starts cutting Katone's ropes. Finally freeing the girl, he asks if she's okay and if she can stand up. But she completely ignores him and jumps straight in to hug our guy, thanking him for saving her skin. That's when a light bulb goes off in Nishi's head, and he immediately starts teasing, asking what this is all about, saying the protagonist nearly killed himself fighting just because she's his little girlfriend. Nishi keeps clowning around, saying the kid's a real heartthrob, and Katone gets all embarrassed until Rikuto ruins everything by asking who she is. Nishi is left in shock, and the protagonist tells it straight that he has no idea who the girl is. She looks a little deflated but accepts that it's been a long time and explains that her name is Tachibana Katone from elementary school. She says they used to be inseparable and called each other by nicknames. While the protagonist tries to dig through his memory, he gets hit with a heavy flashback of the girl he wanted to protect and the boy he would never forgive. Flashback mode activated, and little Rikuto tries to defend the girl but ends up on the ground. The kid is completely messed up and breaking out in a cold sweat while his demon of a brother looks at him with that psychopath expression. Then comes the bizarre part. a car accident in the middle of the rain with Kaito holding a piece from the sabotage brake. His aunt and uncle and his brother were absolute scum and blood sprays everywhere. Kaito steps on his head without a shred of mercy, and that's how the light in our boy's eyes disappeared. Back to reality with that look of someone who's already given up on life. He feels a bizarre wave of nausea and almost throws everything up. His companions have no idea what's going on. As the mood turns heavy, the kid collapses to his knees trying to catch his breath. He tries to play it off, saying he's fine, but Nishi tells it straight that it's obvious he's not okay. The protagonist comments that he didn't even know they went to the same school. Kotona apologizes with the face of someone who feels like trash. But he says she did the right thing by staying away because getting involved with a bullying target is just asking to get screwed over. Kotona just stands there, eaten up with guilt. Then Nishi says they can't waste any time and need to head back now, but asks if she's up for it. She agrees, and they leave while taking in the damage to the school and check out this bizarre creature they find. It looks like the place is almost cleared of monsters, and Nishi has a suspicion that that ogre really was the school's boss. The protagonist doesn't say anything, just keeps his focus on the hallway, until they hear a noise coming from those metal doors. They shut the fire doors just to be safe and finally return to the rooftop where the survivors were. The sky is even clear, but the mood here is still heavy. And the moment they step through the door, everyone goes wild with joy. Professor Uyama comes running over, already sucking up to Nishi. But Kotone doesn't even have time to breathe because Saito immediately rushes in and wraps her in a bear hug. The guy is all lovey-dovey, saying he was worried while our boy just watches without understanding a thing. Nishi stays off to the side, just picking up on the tension in the air. Kotone looks like she'd rather be anywhere else but there. And Saito drops the truth that the two of them are dating. Just look at that fake smile on this guy. Sakura immediately jumps in, totally shocked by the gossip. The guy even says their families have already given the relationship their blessing. But Katon can only lower her head, completely frozen. Saito tries to thank Nishi for the rescue, but our guy cuts him off right away and tells him to thank Rikuto. The blonde can't believe the extra did all that by himself. And the gossip spreads fast, with everyone doubting whether the MC is really the same guy as before. Saito finally talks to our boy, acting like he barely remembers his name and thanks him for the rescue, but then throws in that twisted comment that Kotone was nothing but trouble. Look at the venom. The protagonist doesn't even flinch. He says it was nothing. Then the faker asks them to leave the girl with him and takes her away, while the poor thing looks back. Sakura is also completely thrown off by this whole dating story, and Nishi takes the chance to thank her for the item she got, saying it saved their skin. She starts explaining the science behind the alcohol and leaves the kid totally dazed, but when he asks why she had that stuff, the blonde turns bright red. With talent like that, she can hide whatever she wants. Professor Uyama comes over right away, asking for a report, and Nishi explains that the situation outside is a disaster. No one else is alive. The news hits the group hard. At least the fire doors are locked and the teacher immediately relaxes, thinking they're safe. The teacher starts acting crazy and barking out orders, but the students just stand there noticing this guy's hypocrisy. And that's how the scramble to set up the base begins, with everyone carrying boxes, trying to last one more day. While everyone stacks desks to block the passageways, the girls take care of the food supplies. Sakura checks her kit. With chemistry skills like that, I'd take any class she taught. Nishi stays off to the side, just catching his breath. But then suddenly a heavy dragging noise starts scraping across the floor, coming from a giant sack that doesn't look friendly at all. Our boy is dragging a whole pile of bodies by himself. It's bizarre seeing arms sticking out of the sack like that. Katone can only stare, shocked by the dirty work left to him, and he explains that they need to get the dead out of there before they start to rot. Katone asks what he's going to do with all those people, and Rikuto just gives her that empty look over his shoulder. He keeps dragging the burden alone and remembers that the people in the sack are the same ones who made his life hell. The bullies who beat him up, and even the teachers who pretended not to see what was happening. The MC admits he always wished everyone there would drop dead, and Katone listens with the expression of someone being slapped across the face. But now that his wish has come true, it feels awful, and he feels like the end of the world is divine punishment for how bitter he was. But to Katone, he was always her hero, both now and in the past. The guy is left a little stunned hearing that. He remembers her as a child calling him by his nickname. She decides to help with the sack, and the protagonist even tries to stop her. He warns her that the scene is way too gruesome for a girl to see, but she tells him she can't keep running from reality anymore. Then out of nowhere, someone comes running up, and the two of them are startled. Saito comes flying in and shoves our boy to the ground. Then he starts yelling, asking what he's doing with his girlfriend. Look at how unhinged this guy is. Saito says she doesn't need to do this disgusting work, while Rikuto just glares up at him. He calls the protagonist a sly bastard and says he should be ashamed of using Katone. She tries to explain that helping was her idea, but Saito immediately says the MC is using the rescue to pressure her. She can't make sense of this level of manipulation, and the pretty boy even says he's going to tell everyone about this incident so everyone will keep an eye on Kurogane. The guy is dead set on ruining our boy's reputation. Saito tells her to shut up and tries to drag her away, but Rikuto just says he doesn't care and tells him to do whatever he wants. The MC goes back to work, while the rich kid laughs, calling the guy trash. He forbids Kotone from talking to the protagonist and tells her to just obey, and Rikuto keeps walking without even looking back. But the girl's patience had run out and she slaps that lunatic across the face. So satisfying. Saito is left stunned, holding his cheek, and she reveals she only put up with him because of their father's business dealings. Saito argues that they promised to be together forever, but Kotone tells him straight that it was just a deal between their parents. Rikuto tells them to take their fight somewhere else, and Saito immediately snaps, telling him to shut up. He starts saying she needs him for protection, but Kotone clearly remembers that he used her as bait to save himself. The guy tries to pretend he doesn't know anything, but the flashback shows that when the goblins arrived, Saito was the first to run away and left her alone while he looked for a hole to hide in. In the middle of the chaos, he realizes it's not going to work and that the creatures are about to catch them. So the piece of trash simply sacrifices Kotone and lets her fall to use her as bait. She is left speechless, processing the betrayal while she watches the coward disappear down the hallway. Alone, she crawls into a corner just as the goblins appear. Luckily, she hides behind some lockers and stays there, praying not to be discovered. Saito starts stammering, saying it was all a misunderstanding, and tries to convince the girl that he was just desperate. But Kotone is done with this act and tells him straight that she doesn't trust even his shadow anymore. Then the guy starts going off the rails, asking if she's into Rikoto, and lets out that little laugh of someone who's completely lost it. The girl is in shock watching his breakdown while Saito grits his teeth in rage. He screams at her to shut up and obey, and immediately turns violent, grabbing the collar of her blouse. A sharp crack cuts through the air and Rikoto stops Saito's arm on the spot. Calm as ever, he just says he wants to work in peace. The rich kid starts trembling, feeling that the MC's aura has changed. He can't understand how the boy who used to get beaten up all the time is now looking at him like this. He tries to laugh, but he's panicking. Kotone says he's gone too far, but Saito keeps barking that Rikoto is a freak. Then the protagonist decides to speak up and asks him something. He wants to know what this whole act is for, because putting others down won't raise his worth. Saito is shaking all over and yells that Rikoto has no right to lecture a model student. He struck a fighting pose. The nerve of this lunatic. He says selfish people like the MC only ruin the group. Our boy looks at him with boredom while the rich kid swears he's going to beat him to a pulp. He figures out it's karate but turns his back and refuses. The lunatic laughs, thinking he won, but then Rikuto explains he's only not hitting him because he doesn't want to upset Kotone. Saito just stands there processing the insult and explodes in rage, charging at our guy. He tells Rikuto to shut up and throws a punch, but for someone who already survived an ogre, this is slow motion. The protagonist doesn't feel even a drop of fear and dodges everything with bizarre calm. The playboy ends up tripping over his own feet and falls face first toward one of the dead bodies that was in the bag. The shock is so great that he freezes on the spot, and Rikuto just asks if he's finally decided to help with the heavy work. Saito is on the floor clutching a broken piece of wood while Rikuto looks at him like he's nothing. Then Nishi shows up in the hallway asking what happened. The protagonist says it was nothing serious, but the rich kid is sweating cold from the dressing down he got. Nishi pretends to believe it and asks if Kotone and Saito accept the situation. With no time for talk, Rikuto goes back to work, reflecting that Saito was the school's genius who had never gone through real hardship. Meanwhile, the rich kid asks Nishi why he decided to show up there. Nishi apologizes for leaving the heavy work to Rikuto, and the protagonist jokes by calling him Master Archer. Nishi gets incredibly embarrassed by the teasing, and Kotone just laughs, thinking the scene is a miracle in the middle of the chaos. Now the plan is to take the last bodies to the rooftop and come back to decide the next step. Night falls over the school, and in the improvised shelter, everyone tries to relax a little. Even the tough delinquents are now huddled up there while someone brings a box of supplies so everyone can hang in there. Professor Uyama is there shouting that he's setting an example, and everyone is sick of it. Nishi and Kotone have no appetite, but Rikuto devours dinner without mercy. Out of nowhere, a scream cuts through the silence and Sakura appears furious. She tries every possible way to get the phone to turn on and shows the charger she found, but the battery won't charge even though the thing is brand new. Basically, if a creature came out of it, the device is done for. Sakura collapses to the floor. She really wanted to see the news. Kotone questions whether the internet works without electricity, and the blonde explains that the city has a backup system. She just wanted a phone that wasn't a portal, and the protagonist pulls out his own. Rikuto explains that the bully broke his earlier, but Sakura tells it like it is. Broken like that, it's useless. Kotone realizes her phone is exactly the same as Rikuto's, and Nishi is stunned that they both use such an ancient model. Just look at his dumbfounded face. But Sakura sees an opportunity and explains that this specific model is the only one she might be able to fix. That spark of hope appears, and the mood in the shelter changes completely. Then Nishi calls everyone for a meeting and lays it out straight. The food will only last 3 days, and they're cut off from everything. The protagonist shows the trash weapons they managed to get. I wouldn't take on a goblin with that stuff. The archer admits they're screwed, but Sakura has a plan. The plan is to cannibalize Kotone's phone to bring our boys back to life. Sakura says she can handle it, but she's laughing nervously. Nishi even jokes that Takeda helped by destroying the MC's device. With internet access, they might find rescue or shelter. Kotone asks about the computers, but the answer is depressing. Just look at the state of those screens. Our genius is practically having a breakdown from all the stress. Nishi explains that only Rakuto's phone has a chance of working if it's repaired, and that there are definitely more people out there in the same situation. The protagonist just listens while adjusting the metal pipe on his shoulder. But for this plan to work, they need specific tools, and the target is a department store nearby. Sakura confirms they have everything there, and the girls get excited because they can grab food and weapons at the same time. But the teacher yells at them to stop and starts spouting cowardly nonsense, saying rescue could arrive at any moment. But Rakuto doesn't even care, and just points out that the store is right there. Our boy suggests going by car and asks the teacher to take the wheel. The guy freezes on the spot. The protagonist explains that going on foot is suicide, but he makes the excuse that he needs to stay behind to protect everyone, and says there's no way he's driving. Nishi is completely thrown off. Then Kotone volunteers to drive and leaves everyone speechless. Nishi asks about her license, and she explains that her grandfather lives out in the countryside and had been letting her drive his truck since she was little. Saito is in shock. He asks if Kotone has completely lost it, but she tells him to stay out of it, and Rakuto asks if she's sure. Our guy warns her that it's crazy out there, and that even inside a car they won't be completely safe, but she's determined not to die in some pointless way. The protagonist looks at her for a second and says, "Understood," with that rare little smile on his face. He says he's counting on her help, while Saito stands off to the side, practically exploding with jealousy. Out of nowhere, the teacher slams his fist on the table. He's furious, asking who gave them permission to decide everything on their own. The guy snaps, shouting that he's the teacher, and that the responsibility is his, telling Nishi to shut up immediately. He says they're just kids and need to calm down. We wait. He points at the water supply and swears that if they ration the food, they can hold out a whole week waiting for rescue. But Rakuto starts walking toward him with that icy stare and asks if he really thinks staying put is safe after everything they've seen. Rakuto says there is no safe place anymore, while blue slime drips from the ceiling. Arata freezes when he feels the splatter. A scream for help interrupts the argument. Tammy is being swallowed alive by a giant slime. Just look at the size of that thing. The poor guy tries to breathe, but the slime has already engulfed him. Our guy doesn't waste a second and charges in while the rest just watch the kid get devoured. He drives home that standing still is asking to die and brings the pipe down on the creature with everything he's got. Rakuto swings the pipe down with all his might while trying to tear a hole in the slime. The impact is so strong that Tammy gets spat back out and hits the floor, coughing his lungs out as the slime recoils. But the thing is still intact and ready for another round. The protagonist immediately takes position and yanks a curtain from the window to use as bait. He shouts for Nishi, and our archer is already lining up the shot to finish the play. It's bizarre. The slime melts flesh but leaves the polyester clothes untouched. Our boy rushes in with the curtain and starts counting down together with Nishi. On 3, they manage to yank the creature off the poor guy. Sakura watches the whole thing from the sidelines, unable to believe the raw strength of those two. But the gelatinous thing barely felt that hit, and the protagonist explains that this monster is immune to physical damage. Nishi immediately starts panicking, asking where they're supposed to get fire, but Sakura brings the answer in her case. She throws the chemical liquid and then sets it on fire, and boom, the flames consume the gelatin in a second. All that's left is a stain on the floor, and Rikuto admits that she saved their skins. But the victory doesn't last long because Tammy is sprawled on the floor, lifeless. The MC is left speechless as the cowardly teacher comes over trying to make sense of the chaos. Rikuto stares the teacher down and the guy starts trembling, saying they all nearly got killed. The protagonist asks if the plan is really to just sit around waiting for a rescue they don't even know exists, and Uyama breaks down and drops to his knees. Just look at the state of this grown man. He gives up trying to be in charge and lets them do whatever they want. Out in the courtyard, Nishi starts sniping goblins and Rakuto cleans up the rest with the iron pipe. Job done. The MC confirms the area is clear, and Nishi tells them to run to the teacher's car that Kotone just found. Nishi hands over the key and gets startled when he sees it's a manual transmission, but Kotone says she actually drives even better like that. Then he sees Sakura coming over and she explains that she's the only one who knows the parts needed to fix the phone. All shy, she climbs into the seat, already lamenting that her life is going to end early. But then Nishi notices someone else coming, and it's Saito showing up out of nowhere. He says he's coming too because it's his duty to protect Kotone. Unbelievable. Nishi immediately warns Saito not to cause any trouble, and the guy swears he's not stupid and that he wants to live too. While Kotone shows the map to the coward, Nishi just hopes he doesn't screw anything up. She asks if everyone's ready, and Nishi confirms right away, putting his faith in the driver. Sakura looks like she's about to have a full-on breakdown from fear. The protagonist stays silent and gives the final order to move out off to the AO market. The car disappears into the distance while the people who stayed at the school watch from afar. One of the girls remembers that Rakuto ordered the bodies to be burned, but Professor Uyama loses it and starts smashing the wall with a stick. Just look at the state of that lunatic. He screams that he doesn't want to hear anyone say the protagonist's name ever again, and yells that he's the one in charge there, leaving the other students stunned by his tantrum. But while he's making a scene outside, the city has turned into an all-you-can-eat buffet for every kind of monster, with those three-eyed wolves already securing dinner. The wolves have already surrounded the van and Kotone simply runs one over. Roadkill. Mission accomplished. Rikuto gives her a quick nice for the maneuver, and Nishi says small monsters are the least of their problems, but then he freezes on the spot when he sees a titan right there on the corner. No bumper surviving that thing. Sakura tells them to turn back and take the next corner to avoid it, and the protagonist puts all the pressure on our driver. Meanwhile, the sky is packed with creatures perched on the utility poles, and the wolves howl to signal that the van is surrounded. Look at the feast the streets have turned into, man. The crows are already securing dinner. Nishi says it really looks like the world has finally ended. The protagonist asks if he saw any survivors, but Nishi admits he didn't see anyone. In the middle of the silence, Seitu tells them to stop the car and Kotone slams on the brakes. Nishi asks if the scaredy cat saw something, and Seitu points ahead and says that there's a convenience store right there where they can grab some food. Sakura suggests stopping by the store to stock up, but the protagonist says there's already food at their final destination. Seitu complains that no one listens to what he says just because they think it's dangerous, and tells Rikuto to stop acting like the leader. Nishi tries to calm things down while Sakura begs them to get along, and Kotone just lets out an annoyed sigh listening to her ex's nonsense, while the archer falls into thought trying to decide what to do. After all, there's no guarantee they'll find food, and the risk is high, and that now there's no such thing as a right or wrong choice anymore. But the MC decides that since the die is cast, he'll give it everything he's got. The MC says it straight, he won't complain about anything, no matter what happens. Nishi just gives a faint smile, thinking the protagonist is weird. Then the archer decides that yes, they are going into the store, and checks if everyone's on the same page. 5 minutes later, they pull into the parking lot. Rikuto asks Saito if this is the place. Nishi immediately takes the lead to guide the group. While Sakura wishes them luck from the car window, the trio enters the store, which is completely trashed. The scene inside is depressing, and Nishi notices the shelves are completely bare. Fresh food is long gone, but Rikuto finds salvation in canned goods, and they decide to clean out whatever's left. With their bags full of water and food, the group gets ready to get out of there. But Saito suddenly freezes, swearing he heard a strange noise coming from the back. Nishi immediately calls out, asking if anyone's there, but there's no one there. There's just a cardboard box there, and the atmosphere turns tense. They walk over to check it out, and Seitu breaks into a huge grin when he sees it's full of bread. But Rikuto tells him to stop. The idiot wants to take the credit, but the MC feels like something's off. Just look at all the blood splattered across the floor. Seitu goes pale, asking what the hell happened there. There's even a warning on the floor telling people to get out because of the monsters. But Seitu ignores the danger and thinks the MC just wants the bread for himself. Seitu is being a complete asshole as usual, yelling that the bread is his and nobody else's. But then the box opens a giant eye and a tentacled monster leaps straight onto his neck. His scream of agony echoes all the way to the parking lot, and the girls inside the van can tell things have gone bad. Sakura immediately tells Kotone to duck because some lizard men are passing by with a human head on a spear. They freeze in place, hoping Rikuto is still in one piece. While inside, the monster from the box is slicing Seitu apart. But our boy isn't the type to freeze up, and he immediately charges at the giant eye. He lands a direct hit to freeze Seitu and immediately winds up the next one to finish the job. The kid realizes it's a mimic, just like in RPGs. But Nishi appears at the door, warning that things have gotten worse outside. A whole squad of lizard men is surrounding the parking lot. The two of them stay hidden, watching every move while the 5 monsters patrol past with those spears. Nishi is sweating bullets. The big lizard stops beside the car and starts sniffing the air while the 2 girls try not to breathe at all. But no luck. The creature finds them and panic breaks out. Rikuto sees what's happening and realizes the time for hiding is over and immediately says they'll have to charge in. Seitu is back there practically having a breakdown from sheer terror, and the protagonist decides to leave the dead weight behind. The creatures are already dragging the girls out of the car, and Sakura is desperate, screaming that she probably doesn't even taste good. The lizard raises its spear to end it all. Nishi wastes no time and fires a precise arrow into the creature's neck, and it drops dead onto the asphalt, and our boy comes flying in with the metal pipe and starts beating the hell out of them. He lands a blow that sends the lizard flying and immediately yells for Kotone to protect Sakura and run if necessary. But now the protagonist is surrounded by 3 armed monsters while Nishi tries to cover him from the corner. But the beast dodges the arrow, and the archer realizes that without the element of surprise, they're screwed. Nishi realizes that if this keeps up, Rikuto is done for, and that 1 against 3 is just unfair. The protagonist faces the creatures, wondering if he's going to die there, while one of them is already leaping at him with everything it's got. But he says he won't die, lying down and blocks the blow with what little strength he has left. But a second lizard takes advantage of the opening and catches our boy off guard. He freezes up instantly, but someone throws a rock and hits the monster dead on. Rikuto and the monsters are completely confused by that rock coming out of nowhere. Out of nowhere, Takeda appears on the roof winding up like he's in a baseball game. The kid starts pelting the lizards with rocks like a machine gun, and the beasts get dizzy without knowing where the attack is coming from. Nishi spots the opening right away and fires an arrow to end one of their careers. Another guy jumps down from above to help, throwing a right hook straight into the middle of its snout. The guy's got brass knuckles on while Rakuto takes advantage of the opening to crush the last lizard with the pipe. Area clear, and the protagonist can finally breathe. He thanks Teicha for the help, and honestly, with all of Sakura's talent, I'd follow her to the ends of the earth. Meanwhile, the kid asks them not to leave and asks Teicha if they can come along. Nishi admits he almost bought it, but the protagonist doesn't lose focus. Everyone runs to the car and is stunned to see Kotone behind the wheel. 10 minutes later, and the blonde introduces himself as Ice Tota. He points to their hideout, which is of all things a motel. That's the level of these guys' base. The girls nearly die of embarrassment while the kid explains that it's safe there because there are no cell phones, and also makes it clear that he's not a couple with the upperclassmen. Nishi suggests exchanging information, but Saito, being the same trash as always, just walks off. Nishi apologizes and tells everyone not to mind the idiot. Saito is fuming with rage while the blonde remembers the close call when Yamaoka saved him with his fists. The kid is nothing but grateful, but Nishi goes cold when he recognizes the guy's name. They say the upperclassman is an elite delinquent involved with trafficking, the Yakuza, and even worse. But seeing the way he acts, the rumors seem pretty bogus. Then the MC asks what's in the back. Rikuto asks if he was the one who left the warning on the store floor, but he doesn't know anything about it. The blonde is shocked that they know about the warning, and Nishi explains that the plan is to fix a cell phone. The kid is happy to know there are survivors, and Nishi admits the situation is bad but asks what the two of them are going to do, while the blonde girl just stands there unsure. The upperclassman agrees right away and says he'll be the group's tank. The upperclassman asks what the kid is going to do, and the boy is fired up to help. Nishi comments that it's a good thing they stopped at the little market, but warns that continuing the trip like this would be madness. That area must be crawling with them, and Yamaoka agrees that they need to be careful. He says her safety is the priority, and Nishi admits they were too hasty. The guy offers himself up as a soldier at their disposal, and the group finally starts taking action. Seitu stays off in the corner, seething with jealousy, and in the following days the group focuses completely on mapping out a safe route. There was a lot of fighting against the creatures along the way, but the map is finally full of markings. Several days later, the journey finally comes to an end. Nishi and the protagonist get out and come face to face with the huge AO building. Sakura comments that it feels like forever since she was last here. The blonde is shaking all over but swears it's just warriors' excitement. Nishi warns that things are really about to get serious now. Meanwhile, back at the school, the harpies are slicing everyone up, and the rations are so low that it's half a loaf of bread per day. Everyone is at their limit, on the verge of madness, and the girls are already losing hope without any news from the group. Professor Oyama is there stuffing himself alone, and one of the students works up the courage to ask for a little more. He slams his staff on the ground and tells her to forget it, shouting that food is precious while everyone watches that piece of trash stuffing himself alone. Oyama also says that Rikuto isn't coming back and that he's definitely already dead. Then the guy walks up with a disgusting look and grabs the girl, telling her to devote herself to him. What a disgusting bastard. She pulls away in fear and the coward even laughs, saying it was just a joke, leaving everyone in there boiling with rage and the atmosphere at the school on the verge of exploding. Meanwhile, Raiko's group is already inside the store and notices there isn't a single creature in sight. The place is terrifyingly silent. They've already figured out that there are several types of monsters, but where there's one really strong one, the small ones disappear from the area. Nishi calls these bosses FOEs, like in an RPG, and even wonders if there's some rule controlling all of this. But Rikuto cuts off the chatter and focuses on the mission. Sometime later, they find the electronics and tools section, and Sakura freaks out with happiness at the sight of that paradise of parts. Rikuto tells Kotone and Guri to help Sakura and assigns Saito and Nishi to stand guard. Meanwhile, he and the upperclassman go for a patrol, and see that the store is packed with electronics everywhere, and Sakura acts like a kid in a candy store. She immediately starts sketching out some crazy plans and explains that the phone's processor is complete trash. She even asks if they like the smell of solder, while the others just watch her nerdiness reach insane levels. But the silence in the store is making the protagonist really tense. Rikuto is exploring and spots this paper stuck up. The notice says to eliminate intruders and remove the E from the head, and he realizes it's the same kind of note as the one from the other store. He barely had time to think when the ground started shaking. Then a giant stone monster appears right in front of him, and immediately starts tracking the MC's body heat. Our boy realizes it's a golem, and the creature instantly identifies its target for deletion. The monster comes in hard and the speed of that rock is insane. The golem smashes everything in sight while the protagonist tries to find an opening. He lands a hit, but the metal pipe doesn't even scratch the rock. Our boy realizes brute force won't work, and the creature is already preparing the final crushing blow. Rikuto loses his balance, but Yamaoka appears out of nowhere with a boxer's punch. The punch cracks the creature's chest. Yamaoka asks if the protagonist is okay. The golem wavers but stays standing. The MC sees that hitting the center didn't work, and the other guy is already calling for a team attack. The creature attacks, but our guy is focused on the counterattack. He throws another heavy straight, and the punch sends the stone flying. Rikuto is stunned by Yamaoka's raw strength. Even among pros, someone like that is rare, but the golem ignores the punch and keeps coming. The creature lands a glancing blow and makes Yamaoka bleed, leaving the two of them at a total disadvantage. Then the MC remembers the note about removing the E from the head and sees the word Emeth carved into the stone. He figures out the secret and tells his partner to fall back, taking a stance to settle things himself. Rikuto lunges forward, aiming straight for the creature's forehead. He delivers a sharp strike and erases the very first letter of the inscription. The stone giant turns into rubble, instantly, just as Nishi and the rest of the group come running in. They stare at the ground without understanding a thing, while our guy explains that he followed the logic of the note.
The word carved there meant truth.
But by removing the letter E, it becomes death and the monster shuts down. It worked. Nishi comments that the world is turning into some bizarre fantasy RPG. Saito tries to act cool by calling the monster trash, but ends up praising Kurogane for the good work. Our boy's dynamic vision is on another level, and the upperclassman says he trusts him to watch his back now. The blonde kid gets all fired up, wanting to be a hero too. Nishi says the boss is down and tells the group to focus on the loot, but Rakuto senses that something is wrong when a giant purple sphere comes rolling in. Nishi hears a noise coming from above, and out of nowhere a purple rock comes rolling down the stairs. No one expected a boulder in the middle of the mall, but Rakuto is quick and immediately pulls Kotone, avoiding the worst. But then the rock opens a bizarre pink eye and takes shape. Look at the size of this golem, man. The two of them realize the real boss has arrived, and the creature immediately identifies the intruders to wipe them out. The creature is enormous, and it starts by slamming a punch into the ground that makes everyone jump. Rikuto assesses the situation but realizes there's no way to reach the letters up there. Then Nishi steps in and fires an arrow straight at the target. It lands dead on, but doesn't leave so much as a scratch on the stone. Nishi is shocked that the creature is armored while the golem lets out a roar that shakes the whole mall. The boss's eye starts to glow and Sakura realizes the creature is charging an attack. Panic sets in and the protagonist yells for everyone to get out of there. Nishi immediately starts dragging Kujo and Takeda runs along with the rest of the group. Kotone calls out to Rikuto but the shot fires at that exact moment. The laser tears through the entire mall, leaving the golem there, reigning in the middle of the flames. The golem stands there motionless right after blasting a massive hole in the floor. Our boy managed to pull Nishi out of the line of fire, but the kid is knocked out cold. Kotone asks if Sakura and the others are okay, and the coward is already starting to shake. The creature is blocking the way to the stairs, and he suggests leaving Nishi behind since he's dead weight. Rikuto says flat out that he won't abandon anyone, even if he dies, and the girl is moved while the other guy grinds his teeth in rage. Rikuto helps Nishi get up while everyone tries to recover and the giant golem appears through the flames. Nishi asks what that creature is doing, seeing that it's only focused on attacking the flames. The monster lets out a hollow, bizarre sound. Then our boy plants himself in front of the creature. He starts running to act as bait and yells for Kotone to get out of there already. She gets the message and leaves, dragging Saito's burden along. The MC realizes the golem's obsession is attacking the heat of the fire. The first golem said that it detected heat in the area. The plan is for Kotone to throw the flare to distract the monster, so our boy can get away. The problem is if the thing focuses on them on the stairs, the group is up there waiting. Rikuto gives the signal and tells her to throw it. She already gets her arm ready, but Saito suddenly grabs her arm and the flare drops, ruining the whole plan. The flare goes rolling down the stairs, and Rikuto can't believe the stupidity he just witnessed. Saito immediately starts stammering that he had to do it while Kotone desperately screams the protag's name. The monster wastes no time and throws a punch right at him, almost crushing the protag against the pillar. Robert, Rikuto tells the girl not to come closer and warns her to take Nishi and get out now. He even orders Saito to protect her no matter what. But that piece of trash already says the MC is done for and wants to bail. Kotone tells Saito to go to hell with a jab and runs into the middle of the chaos to try to save the protag. The thing lets out an eardrum-piercing roar, and Rikuto completely freezes, falling into that mindset that he's useless. Then that voice in his head comes back, tearing the kid apart, saying he's already dead and worth nothing. The golem is already ready to finish him off for good, but the girl won't accept that ending. She throws herself in front of him at the last second and holds on to Rikuto with all her strength, determined not to leave him alone. The golem brings its arm down, destroying everything, and Rikuto asks why she was so reckless. But Kotone grabs the protag by the collar and asks how he can give up so easily. She tells him straight that the Rikuto she knows isn't like this, and the kid is left in shock trying to understand what she meant. Then he remembers that he always protected her in the past and regains his will to fight facing the monster because they're still alive. Out of nowhere, an arrow hits the thing in the head. The golem reels from the impact as reinforcements appear in the distance. Nishi shows up apologizing and jokes that he was taking a nap. Our guy and Kotone are relieved to see the group is alive. Takeda is there too, with that look like he's about to handle things. And the archer already says, now is the time for the counterattack. The protag tells Kotone to get back so the thing doesn't get her. The golem slams its arm down hard, destroying the ground where they were standing. Nishi comments that the situation is bad and running away isn't an option. To make everything worse, something is pounding on the door behind them, and Saito is already panicking. Nishi warns that the little golems from downstairs are back and Saito is practically having a heart attack from fear. Rikuto decides to draw the big monster's aggro and tells the archer to focus his shots on that E on its chest. But Nishi warns that he won't be able to hold out much longer. But the MC shouts that they need to fight while they're still alive. Sakura and Takeda just watch the fight from afar until the blonde gets an idea. She shouts the boys' names and says she can do something if they hold the monster off. Sakura explains that she has a plan, but it sounds kind of absurd. But Rikuto trusts her. The blonde is even shaken by the faith the protag put in her. She asks if he really doesn't think she's just talking crazy, and Rikuto immediately shouts for Nishi to help him with the distraction. While the blonde asks if she can really pull it off, and she says it's all or nothing now. At that, Yamaoka charges in while the golem grows furious. Now it's time to see if her weird concoction will save the day. Sakura is trembling all over while the golem nearly crushes Rikuto outside. Everyone is shouting and the blonde is already starting to crack under the pressure. She remembers that the protag believed in her, and that gives her the push she needs to finish the job. With extreme care, she finishes the mixture and celebrates that the stuff is ready. Good lord, look at the level of this chemistry genius. But she already warns that if it's shaken, it'll blow everything up, and now the goal is to hit the monster in the head. But the joy doesn't last long, because Sakura realizes she doesn't have the strength to throw the vial that high. But then Ice shows up and takes the thing from her hand, saying he was on the baseball team, and the throw is his job. The blonde almost has a heart attack, and tells him to be careful while the giant golem keeps being a living nightmare. Just look at the size of that thing, I would have run already. Nishi is at his limit, and the thing's eye starts glowing a sinister purple, making the boys think they were done for. But Ice is already getting ready to make the throw of his life. The blondie appears out of nowhere apologizing for the delay and throws a vial, saying it's a present from Sakura. The glass hits the thing dead on, while Kotone asks what the blonde has been cooking up. The genius explains that she mixed some acids into glycerin and created pure nitroglycerin. Then the magic happens and Nishi is nearly blown away by the force of the explosion. Tuta is left with that dumbfounded look watching the thing get vaporized from the waist up. Nishi is left speechless at the damage and asks what that blast was. Sakura gives a little my bad with that face of hers. Can you believe it? And Blondie goes pale, telling her to warn them first. Look at the size of this building, where everything turned into gray rubble. Nishi says it was total madness to do that, but Rikuto doesn't even care, and is already opening the door while Nishi tries to hold the kid back, and sees that the stair railings have turned into nothing but a pile of rubble. Rikuto gives a little grin, saying they beat the boss, and immediately asks if Sakura got the parts. He says thanks, and the blonde girl almost melts from embarrassment, while Nishi says it's time to go. Then Colton tears into Saito, saying he's trash, and the coward tries to play it off like he just wanted to save her. She tells him to never come near her again. Nishi asks what happened, and Rikuto says things got tense. Then Saito starts freaking out, clutching his head in bolts, while Nishi yells for him to stop. Saito runs off like a madman and slips into the middle of a dark storage room. He's out of his mind, blaming the protagonist for everything, and saying the MC needs to die already. He kicks some boxes to vent his anger, but stops cold when he sees a silver knife. The object is stuck into a coffin covered in warnings telling no one to touch it, complete with a magic seal. The genius ignores the danger and pulls out the knife, making the lid open on its own. A red-eyed skeleton rises from the coffin and immediately grabs Saito by the throat. Meanwhile, Nishi and Yamaoka keep shouting for the runaway, and the guy suddenly appears behind them out of nowhere. He comes back apologizing with a bizarre smile, and Nishi gives him an earful for disappearing. Saito says they're done already and wants to leave acting weirdly cheerful. Yamaoka gets a chill without noticing that a red-eyed shadow is following them. The tires screech on the asphalt, and the group finally arrives at the base. Sakura even jokes that it felt weird going into a hotel while the hallways remain deathly silent. But the mood changes when she shouts that she did it, and everyone crowds around to see the miracle. Google loads, and she confirms the internet didn't go down and takes the chance to brag a little. The MC asks her to look for any rescue signal, but the feed is nothing but a graveyard of people asking for help. Sakura finds a post about a shelter showing living people in Amashima. Nishi wants to get out of there as soon as possible, while this lunatic watches the couple from afar. The kid is possessed by a bizarre shadow, and our guy says he'll explain everything tomorrow. But the mood shifts back at the school. The infirmary is a bloody mess, and there's a figure attacking someone on the bed. It's Professor Oyama, attacking a female student. Good lord, look at the size of this poor girl's talent. Oyama is enjoying the moment in a sick way while we see what happened at the school after the MC's group left. On the rooftop, the monsters are having a feast on the remains of those left behind. And things are looking bad for the group that stayed, with everyone already starting to go crazy from hunger. One of the boys loses it and demands food and even accuses the teacher of hiding the supplies. He tries to square up to the guy, but he doesn't even move and tells everyone to shut up and obey because he's the one in charge there. The kid tries to challenge him and throws a punch, and the sick bastard drops to the floor in humiliation. The teacher says he hates people who freeze up, and the kid is furious but can't do anything. The people around them are in shock when the maniac pulls out a knife and drives it straight into the kid's stomach, without a second of hesitation. Blood gushes out, and Oyama doesn't even wipe his face, leaving the boy to writhe in agony until he dies. Then he just says everyone better obey the teacher now. Oyama goes all in, saying bad kids need a lesson. Back in the present, the lunatic walks into the room with Enomoto over his shoulder and hums to the rest of the girls. They're all huddled in a corner, trembling, and he throws the poor girl onto the floor. Good lord, look at the size of this runner's talent. With the knife in hand, the teacher praises her endurance and already picks the next target. Kasahara panics and tries to sell out her own friend, just to save herself. Professor Uyama has finally completely snapped and pulled out a knife, saying the girls need to be good and obey the teacher. All they can do is cry. Then the guy turns to the side and sees Hayashi trembling like a leaf. The teacher asks if he has a problem and shows what happened to the boys who tried to be heroes. The kid freezes on the spot and swears he'll be obedient. Then the psycho grabs Kasamoto by the arm and drags her down the hallway while laughing. The ones left behind can only tremble, unable to understand how the world turned into this trash. In the hallway, Kasamoto tries to resist and calls the guy scum, and Oyama snaps, demanding to be called teacher. He keeps dragging the poor girl, saying she needs remedial lessons, and keeps that bizarre look in his eyes. The girl left in the room completely breaks down, while the teacher keeps acting like he owns the place with that macabre smile of someone who's lost all sense. But then hears a noise and realizes it's his car. Oyama is stunned when he sees his own car arriving and immediately starts putting the pieces together with a look of pure hatred. But down below, the mood is one of relief, with the MC's team finally back. Nishi already has the repaired phone in his hand. The girl sees them from the window and almost cries with joy, but for the teacher, their return is the worst possible news. Look at this bastard's crazy face, breaking out in a cold sweat. In his head, the kingdom he's building has no place for Rikuto. The boys ask them to open the door already without even imagining the psychopath waiting for them inside. Nishi finds the silence strange, while the teacher just stands there in a cold sweat, watching his plan to become king being threatened. The girls regain hope when they hear the MC's name, but Uyama knows that if they see the dead, he's done for. He concludes that only Rikuto and Nishi are a problem, and that he can easily control the rest of the group. The lunatic is still fantasizing about having a harem, and just look at how disgusting this guy is. What a vile bastard. Uyama walks over to the girls and warns them not to make a sound if they value their lives. It's way too quiet, and Nishi asks the protagonist what they should do. Rikuto decides the only way is to force their way in and tells Kotone to use the car to ram the gate. Ko is already thrown off by his crazy plans. Then the teacher opens the gate and immediately puts on a huge fake smile at the sight of the group. Nishi explains that the phone is ready and the supplies are fully stocked. Issei shows up already, saluting, and the teacher's face twists into pure hatred. The lunatic covers it up with a little smile and calls Rikuto and Nishi over for a private talk. The Neshi wants to bring everyone, but Uyama insists on hearing from just the two of them first. The protagonist agrees and the archer tells the group they'll be right back. Rizal fired up while Sakura carries the burden, but then Kotone realizes Saito has vanished without a trace. Kotone keeps wondering where that coward Saito disappeared to, while the teacher leads the boys down an empty hallway laughing to himself and convinced he's already won. He plans to steal Neshi's bow and become the new ruler of the world. Just look at this bastard's psychotic stare. They enter a classroom and the atmosphere instantly turns icy, with Nishi telling him to spit it out already. But Uyama decides to play dirty. He empties the fire extinguisher right into the boys' faces and immediately pulls out a knife, laughing like a demon. The teacher lunges at the blinded Nishi, but our Jubswans's iron pipe is already in the air. He blocks the attack as calmly as can be. The lunatic freezes on the spot. Rikuto says his suspicions are never wrong, while Uyama wonders how he figured out the betrayal. The protagonist just points at the guy's left sleeve covered in human blood that wasn't there before. He doesn't know what happened while they were away, but now he's sure the teacher has gone way too far. The teacher remembers one of the students begging for mercy and warning that one day he'd pay for everything. The bastard starts trembling with pure rage and charges forward, screaming that no one is going to make a fool of him. But Rikuo isn't playing around and jams the pipe into his mouth. The blow is so strong that Oyama goes flying. The protagonist doesn't even blink. Meanwhile, somewhere else some harpies are slicing up what's left of a few students, while a man watches and says they're exactly what he needs. Dear God, just look at the size of those harpies' assets. Seto says it's finally time to begin and lets out that classic villain laugh with a sinister shadow behind him. Meanwhile, back at the school, things are hellish. The students are being treated like animals, and Katona's being forced to hold the rope, binding everyone together. It's become total humiliation. Sakura tries to comfort her friend, who's completely falling apart, while Hayashi just watches with the grin of someone who's totally snapped. Katona breaks down because hope vanished at the worst possible moment, and despair takes over the room full of bodies. Nishi is furious. He grabs the teacher by the collar and asks how he could dare betray his own group, but the guy has completely lost it. He laughs right in the kid's face and asks if they still expect to be saved. The sick bastard tells him to face reality. The world is over and hope is dead, since in the end everyone becomes monster food. Look at this lunatic's face. He says he just wants to have fun before he dies, and the girls are horrified by the disgusting things he's saying. Nishi boils with rage and draws back his arm, ready to beat this trash to a pulp, nearly smashing the teacher's face in. But R grabs his arm right away and says fighting this worm is a waste of time. He also makes it clear they can't take this maniac with them. Sakura doesn't understand any of it, but then Nishi drops the bomb on everyone and says the phone is fixed and they found a village of survivors. The girls cry with joy seeing that there's still a glimmer of hope. The teacher goes into shock. Tied up on the floor, he begs them not to abandon him, swearing that he's learned his lesson now. But the girls only look at this coward with disgust. The MC says they'll decide the guy's fate later because right now the focus is something else. But out of nowhere, a bizarre digital symbol appears in the sky. What the hell is that? Everything starts melting into binary code outside the window, and Rakuto realizes the synchronization still isn't over. Even the ground beneath them starts to shake. The MC runs to the window and sees new data pillars falling all over the city. It's bizarre. Monsters are appearing out of nowhere right in the middle of the street. They're popping up all over in front of the school. Nishi realizes that the nightmare from the first day is repeating itself, and Sakura freezes, remembering how it all began. She doesn't understand why since all the cell phones were fried. Kotone asks our boy what to do while a winged creature tears across the sky. A harpy shatters the window and bursts in, immediately cornering one of the girls as chaos erupts in the classroom, and Nishi realizes things have gone completely to hell. Teishi is already gearing up for a fight, and our boy gets ready to face death again, declaring that there's no way he's dying before smashing the harpy's face in with the pipe. But the army outside is insane. Just look at the size of that horde coming in. Teishi doesn't waste any time either, and decks a goblin with one punch. The squad meets up in the middle of the stairs and Isis shows up in a panic, apologizing for losing the rest of the group. But there's no time for tears. Look at that goblin popping out of the window right behind him. Naishi immediately tells him to focus on surviving, and blows the monster's head off with a perfect arrow shot. But now the danger is coming from above with that crazy harpy diving straight at Kotone. The thing swoops past in a dangerous dive. Even our Sakura gets caught up in it, freezing on the spot when she sees the size of that thing's teeth. The metal pipe cuts through the air and Rikudo blows the harpy's head apart with one clean strike. He asks if Kotone is okay, and she turns bright red. But she gets suspicious because the creatures seem to be avoiding her. Nishi warns that the floor below is hell, and just look at the situation, there's a horde of monsters coming up the stairs. With no other option, our boy decides they have to go up. He tells everyone to run to the roof right now, and the whole squad starts sprinting up the stairs. Meanwhile, we see someone else's perspective, running down another hallway out of breath. This kid is running with a giant spider stuck to his foot. Out of nowhere, a system screen pops up asking if he wants to become a hero. He glitches out hearing a voice and clicks yes, so he won't die. The system processes everything and generates a magic sword while he feels an absurd surge of power. And when the spider attacks with everything it's got, he simply slices the monster in half. The guy just stands there, trying to understand how he suddenly turned into an RPG hero. The kid is in shock at his own power and the girls are already treating him like a god. It's the dream harem in the middle of chaos, bro. Nishi says he's number one and the hero swears total protection, but it's all nothing more than a hallucination. And in reality, the poor guy is being devoured while swearing he'll save everyone. In another hallway, the friendship is over. One girl abandons the other to the slime because her friend tried to sell her out to the teacher and tells her to die while a minotaur appears right behind her. The minotaur doesn't care about the drama and swings its axe, slicing the girl in half, while her friend dies laughing in the middle of the slime. The silence in the hallways is eerie, but inside the bathroom he's still tied up, swearing he'll create a paradise just for himself. But then the door opens and Enomoto appears, calling the guy a cockroach for still being alive, and just look at this survivor's nerve, asking if he has a dream. The guy starts rambling about a perfect life and a happy family. Enomoto says she wanted to grant a wish, but since he dishonored her, she decided to show all her talent when settling the score. The teacher is desperate, begging for forgiveness, but she doesn't want to hear it, and immediately slashes his chest, leaving the guy bleeding on the floor while she laughs. She explains that he's going to pay for everything while shadows start rising from the blood. How bizarre, with the souls of the others coming back to drag the coward away. Uyama begs for mercy, but Enomoto has already snapped, laughing as she watches the blood flow. Debt paid. Rikuto finally spots the rooftop door, and Nishi asks what the plan is. We'll figure it out on the spot, and when he opens the door, he finds Saito waiting, and Nishi celebrates that the guy is alive, but with a sinister shadow behind him, he says the actors have gathered and announces that he's been waiting for our boy. Saito thanks everyone for escorting Kotone, and Nishi asks if he hit his head, but Rikuto feels that something is off, while Saito puts on that whole villain act. Then this giant skull emerges from his shadows and the people in the back panic. Nishi realizes it's an RPG lich and doesn't understand why the thing is protecting that coward. The guy explains that he let the monster use his body to gain this so-called summoning system. Saito says it's none of their business and immediately starts summoning some bizarre thing. A data pillar falls from the sky, destroying everything, and Rikudo can only stare at the devastation. Harpies and goblins start coming out of the light, and in seconds the rooftop is packed with monsters. Pure fear. Sakura and the blonde guy feel like their brains are frying at the sight. For our boy, the atmosphere is identical to the day the apocalypse began. And then Saito snaps, shouting that now he's the one in charge. Saito's acting like he owns the whole world, and says that for now he only controls these weak creatures, but soon he'll be commanding elite monsters. He looks at the city in flames and says that with him around, no one needs to be afraid of anything anymore. Then he turns to Kotone and says that now he's going to protect her, and that she can stop relying on trash like Rikoto. With a really twisted smile, he calls the girl over to him, but Kotone asks if he was the one who sent the monsters into the classroom, and the guy shamelessly admits it. Kotone remembers every brutal death, but Saito couldn't care less. The sicko says he only needs her. Trembling with rage, she tells him the truth, saying that he's simply stopped being human. She's seen plenty of bizarre creatures and screams that now he's the worst monster of them all. The lunatic is left in shock while the energy around him grows far too heavy. He goes into complete denial and freaks out so badly that Nishi is already bracing for the worst. Saito lets out a roar of, "This is wrong," and erupts with dark energy, blasting everyone away with the pressure. Sakura and Kotone are stunned by how huge this maniac's power is, and now look at the state of him. Saito has turned into a full-on skull monster. He's there drooling with rage because Kotone chose our boy and says he doesn't need her anymore, ordering the horde to attack. Rikuto and Nishi immediately set up a defense and tell the girls to fall back while our guy starts clearing out this monster zoo with the pipe and blocks the attack of this lizard-faced creature, allowing the two of them to run for safety. Sakura screams in desperation, warning that there's a creature behind Kotone. Our boy appears and stops the blow with the pipe. Holding his ground, he gets thrown away. Kotone freezes, seeing Rikuto get slammed into the wall. Nishi and Takeshi try to help while the girls run to help the MC. Kotone and Sakura run to help him and find our boy completely battered, bleeding, and slumped against the wall. Out of nowhere, Rikuto's mind drifts somewhere else and he finds himself back in his own room. He has no idea what's going on until he notices someone entering the room. It's Kaito, his trash brother, showing up with that mocking little grin. Meanwhile, in real life, Kotone is in tears, begging him to wake up, holding him like it's the end. Sakura and Ice can only watch in shock, convinced the protagonist is done for. Nishi tries to hold back the horde but panics when he sees Rikuto unconscious. A lizard jumps in to attack and Takeshi intercepts it with a huge punch. The kid freezes, and the former bully tells him not to give up. He faces the monsters while thinking of Rikuto, and that gives the archer a boost. Seeing this tough guy protecting everyone like this is insane. Nishi pulls himself together and immediately takes aim at the next target. Nishi remembers that Rikuto was never the type to give up, and fires another arrow to open a path, while Ice goes all out, but the skull creature announces that the MC's heart has stopped. Then they remember that Kotone wanted to be a doctor before this hell began. She looks at Rikuto lying on the ground and Sakura instantly turns red when she sees the scene. Kotone starts mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, determined not to give up on him. If it was only the impact that stopped his chest, there's still a chance. Sakura sees Kotone trying to save the protagonist and decides that she needs to act too, but she's out of dynamite. She explains that the creature is a lich, an elite undead, and realizes that Nishi and Takeshi won't last much longer on their own. That's when she finds the badly bent metal pipe on the ground and decides to test a new technique with it. The skull monster is just standing there watching the chaos, not understanding why Rikuto is so important to these kids. But then he gets an arrow to the face to cure his curiosity. Nishi says it straight that everyone there cares about the MC, but the lich just lets out that sinister villain laugh and says he'll send the whole group to the grave along with him. But inside Rikuto's mind, a brutal flashback is playing with Serato stepping on his face without an ounce of mercy. The kid was treated like garbage, getting beaten, and hearing that his existence was worthless, and that no one in the world would care if he disappeared. The bastard tells him to just accept it and die already, and the protagonist was almost starting to believe that was his fate. Alone in the void, Rikuto feels like he's nothing but one of the undead, and that even though he tried his best in the end, he couldn't change anything. He's ready to become a soulless body, but out of nowhere, someone grabs his hand tightly. It's Kotone, telling him that he's not alone anymore and that a whole team is waiting for him. She calls him by his childhood nickname, and our boy can't hold back anymore and lets a tear fall. Serato, standing there in the background, even looks confused by the change. Rikuto admits that before he didn't care if he died, but now he finally has a place to return to. In the past, he stood up to his own brother and charged at him without a shred of fear, throwing a punch straight into the idiot's face. The bastard is left in shock. The MC decides to fight until his very last breath. The nightmare finally shatters for good and he comes back coughing his lungs out. Kotone is crying in relief, swearing she thought she'd lost Arjim. Rikuto finally comes back to reality and explains that if she hadn't screamed for him, he would have given himself over to the void for good. His smile is so rare that Kotone even gets flustered. Suddenly, Sakura comes rushing in like crazy and hands over the fully tricked out metal pipe. She used a chemical reaction to coat the iron in silver, remembering that in RPGs, skeletons can't handle that kind of metal. The blonde is seriously unsure whether gamer logic applies here, but our boy assures her she totally nailed it. Rikuto thanks her and immediately heads out at full speed for the fight, while the girls stay behind cheering him on. Nishi and the rest of the group are holding the line and go crazy with joy when they see the Proter is back. The big skeleton, on the other hand, didn't like his return one bit. Rikuto shows up already, ordering everyone to cover him, which leaves Nishi a little confused at first, but he quickly realizes the plan is to go all in. Things get intense and blood goes flying everywhere, but more monsters decide to join the party. Ice doesn't let up with the bombardment and takes out the wolf coming from above. The Gi is exhausted, but no one gets near the Prota. Our boy gives thanks and focuses on what matters. The skeleton is spitting pure hatred and attacks with that bizarre tail. But he saw it coming, jumps over it, and drives the silver into the creature's chest. Rikuto buries the silver into the creature's neck, and it starts turning into black smoke, disappearing from this world for good. Kotone breaks down crying, calling out for Saito, and asks forgiveness for everything that happened. Nishi and the others see the shadows disappearing and realize the boss has finally been taken down. Our boy falls flat on his back, exhausted. He feels that fighting to survive has given life a new meaning, and the whole team runs over to celebrate with the MC. Rikuto just stays there, savoring the feeling of being alive, and soon the day of the big departure arrives with the van packed full of supplies. They give the building one last look, and a lonely feeling hits them, remembering all the people they couldn't save. But the Prota says it straight: if they want to stay alive, the only way is not to let the past hold them back. Everyone agrees, fully on board with the plan. So let's go. We're heading to Umashima, and things are about to get wild. The group now hits the road, speeding ahead in search of hope. But the road is far from peaceful, and check out this girl who showed up, slicing Medusas apart in the street. She stabs a knife into a utility pole, warning everyone not to look these creatures in the eyes. With a stern expression, the stranger just watches, while the danger ahead only keeps growing. A few days pass on the journey, and they discover that not every creature wants to kill people, like those unicorns over there. Everyone keeps traveling in the van. Nishi asks where they are. The Prota points at the map and says they're almost there. They've got plenty of gas, but the archer is worried and decides to talk about his little sister, saying they lived apart because of family issues, and that she lives exactly where they're headed. But seeing those wolves feasting on people along the road is terrifying, making him not want to get his hopes up. Nishi stays stuck in that gloomy mood, thinking about his sister, but Rikito tries to comfort him, saying she must be okay. But the archer asks how he can be so sure. And Archan tells it like it is. If she's as stubborn as her brother, then she's definitely still standing and fighting these abominations. The mood lightens up, and even the MC lets out a little smile, while Nishi gets all embarrassed, and Kotone laughs. He decides there's no point in suffering ahead of time, but the peaceful moment doesn't last long, because out of nowhere a giant wing covers their car. Everyone inside the van panics when Nishi looks out the window and sees how big the problem is. A giant dragon comes tearing through the sky toward them, and the chase begins in the middle of the city. Panic takes over, and Nishi yells that the creature is right on their tail, and asks if Kotone can shake it. She slams her foot on the gas and tells everyone to hold on. The monster lands on the road, destroying the asphalt, and comes in growling right near the van. The creature beats its wings with absurd force and stays airborne so it doesn't lose sight of the van. Nishi, in despair, sees that the dragon is way too fast and is literally glued to their rear bumper. Inside, Ice and Sakura are screaming like there's no tomorrow. The archer points ahead and says there's a highway exit right there. Kotone doesn't hesitate and yanks the wheel while the monster dives in for the final strike, but they finally manage to shake the beast. The dragon is snorting with rage and goes back to the road, determined to slice the van apart. Nishi freaks out and asks Rikuto what they're going to do, and the Proto explains that fighting something like this is asking to die. The creature keeps chasing them, trying to bite down on the car, but while chaos unfolds on the road, someone is watching everything from above. Through the binocular lenses, she sees the insane chase, and it looks like she recognized something or someone in the middle of that mess. The girl on the motorcycle just snaps her fingers and immediately fires up the machine to join the party. She accelerates and cuts through everything. The dragon is snorting right above the van, and Sakura is almost having a meltdown. Our guy fires an arrow, but even though it hits, he doesn't even feel it. Nishi panics, and Rikuto says the only option now is to run. Kotone charges full speed under the overpass, flooring it while trying not to crash. The dragon tries to follow, but its size gets in the way, and the people inside get turned into milkshakes from all the shaking. The beast slams into a beam, and they swear they finally managed to lose the monster. But then out of nowhere the car starts acting up, spewing smoke in the middle of the street. The Proto realizes the engine has finally given out and the dragon is already right there, ready to collect. The dragon comes in drooling, and Rikuto tells everyone to get out of the car now. The group jumps out and starts running while the beast lands, smashing up the ground. Sakura ends up falling, and becomes the main target, with the beast already opening its jaws to make the blonde its dinner. But the Pro-tag is faster and pulls her out of there, saving Kujo while she turns bright red. Good lord, look at the size of that blonde's talon. But the monster doesn't give up and goes to bite both of them. Then Tekshi shows up and jams a giant rock into the beast's mouth. Tekshi holds the beast by the teeth, and Nishi gives the signal. The guy lands a perfect shot right in the monster's face. The dragon roars in pain, and they use the chance to run. The archer asks what they should do, but the MC freezes up and leaves everyone stunned. Nishi looks up at the sky and goes into shock. The danger is coming from above now. There wasn't just one dragon. They just entered these creatures' territory. Nishi yells at Rikuto to watch out for what's coming from behind, and when they turn around, they come face to face with a colossal red dragon. The beast is huge, and the worst part is, it didn't come alone. The sky is swarming with those things. Our boy tells Kotone to get out of there now, when someone pulls out a flare gun and fires it. The shot cuts across the sky, causing an explosion of white light that lights up the whole neighborhood. Everyone has to cover their eyes so they don't go blind, and the dragon starts screaming, completely disoriented by the brightness. The beasts fly around aimlessly, and Nishi asks what that flash was. Out of nowhere, a motorcycle pulls up, revealing a white-haired girl with insane swagger. The group is stunned to see there are more people alive. She explains that the monsters are attracted to light, but stresses that the flare is only a temporary trick. The stranger tells everyone to run, shouting that they don't want to become Wyvern Chow. Nishi asks Rikuto what they should do, and the protag decides their only option is to trust her. The biker girl orders everyone to move, and the group runs after her like there's no tomorrow. They reach the subway entrance with Nishi yelling at Sakura to pick up the pace. A red wyvern dives down in a fury at the blonde and almost chomps the poor girl before she throws herself into the station. She collapses on the ground, gasping, feeling like she's been given a second life. But their savior is already down there with a pissed-off look on her face and says her whole plan went out the window because of those idiots who came by car. The biker girl tears into the group, calling everyone idiots for attracting the monsters with the engine noise. The protag keeps that calm smile and just thanks her for saving their skins. She clicks her tongue and looks away, but then tells them to follow her if they want to stay alive. Our boy agrees, and the group heads into the darkness of the subway right behind the motorcycle. He asks if the place is safe, and she assures him they already cleared everything out. Rikuto gets a little suspicious when she says we, and Nishi is shocked to learn there's a large group of survivors nearby. Rikuto just keeps analyzing the situation, while Kotone and Sakura celebrate finally being saved. Meanwhile, the MC and Nishi stay wary, seeing that the girls let their guard down way too fast. They walk along the tracks for quite a while until they spot a light. Bro, it's literally an underground village with tents and campfires everywhere. Ice and Sakura are stunned by the size of the refuge. The group climbs onto the platform to join the survivors, but the archer feels that the atmosphere there is really strange. Looking around, Nishi sees that the mood is really tense. Out of nowhere, someone shouts Ginkgo's name and 3 brutes show up to corner her. The leader immediately grabs her coat and starts chewing her out in front of everyone. He calls the girl a brat with an attitude and asks if she wants to become the group's rice cooker. The piece of trash raises his fist to hit her, but Rikuto stops the punch in midair. Rikuto snaps out a sharp stop, and the brute is left confused, trying to figure out who this red-eyed lunatic is. Our boy squeezes his shoulder so hard that the guy backs off immediately. He asks who they are, while Kotone and Sakura can only watch with their hearts in their throats. The guy completely loses it, calling the group rebels and orders his goons to settle it with knives. But then someone tells them to stop immediately, and the whole group freezes when this new big shot arrives. This guy Hizaki asks what the point of rules is if they themselves don't follow them, and gives a little smile like he's hiding something. He apologizes for his underlings' rough welcome and explains that the guy is just worked up because of the last hunt. The redhead immediately realizes they were trying to reach Amashima and offers mutual help so everyone can make it out alive. Hizaki invites the group to join his community, saying that place is the last hope for those who survived. Rikuto and Nishi exchange a very suspicious look but end up following the guy to see what this shelter is all about. They enter the station office, and Hizaki welcomes the whole group with a huge grin on his face. The redhead formally introduces himself as the leader of the place. Nishi immediately wants to know what the deal with that place really is, and the guy agrees to explain everything. He starts talking about the day the world completely glitched out and how a monster came out of every single cell phone on the planet. Look at the size of that spider that showed up, bro. No way anyone could handle a beast like that. The number of creatures was insane, and not even the army could hold them back, since the beasts were even taking down helicopters. In a matter of minutes, modern society turned into nothing but piles of rubble and tank wreckage. Hizaki goes on to say the rumors are even worse, and that giant fairy tale dragons appeared out of nowhere, wiping out the entire military in a single day. The group listens in shock, and the girls finally understand that rescue was never an option. But Nishi starts to get suspicious of that coincidence and wonders why the strongest monsters went straight for the military bases. He remembers something about controlling those creatures, and some so-called mythic summoning system that would explain a lot. Since the monsters follow an RPG-like pattern, everything points to there being a mastermind behind this calamity. Rikuto is completely baffled, trying to figure out who this lunatic is, while the redhead explains that a lot of people died, but there are still survivors. Their plan is to unite and use the internet and try to reach the city of Amashima, the last safe place. Sakura even gets emotional seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, but Rikuto kills the mood by saying it'll be impossible by land, and Hizaki agrees right away. He explains that those flying monsters are the biggest problem since the road to the city is crawling with wyverns. If they attack from the sky in a pack, it's total game over. Hizaki explains that going underground is also a suicide mission because a giant worm is patrolling the tunnels and the creature hates light, which is what keeps the station safe. Sakura is practically tearing her hair out in despair. But then Hizaki says they have a plan to turn things around, and everyone wonders whether he's actually being serious. He explains that his group has been working hard every day and invites our boy to join forces with them. With not many options, Rikuto ends up accepting the offer, and the rest of the group agrees right away. Hizaki immediately starts dividing everyone into groups and says their job will be hunting. But then the silver-haired girl interrupts, questioning the decision. The redhead reflects and decides the newcomers will go hunting. She complains that the job is far too dangerous, so she tells them to go dig instead. She says they already have more than enough people for cooking and that digging is way too physically demanding for the girls. The girls are stunned and Kotone admits she'd much rather stay in the kitchen. Then Ginkgo calls the boys over for the mission, formally introducing herself as a hunter. Nishi asks what the deal is, and she explains that they'll have to make up for the losses. Kotone calls out to Rikuto, clearly worried, but our guy assures her they'll come back alive. The silver-haired girl is already losing patience with the mushy stuff and tells everyone to get moving already. The city has turned into a nest of wyverns and forced the people to flee underground. But down there, the desperation is absolute when the ground starts to shake. A giant worm bursts through the ceiling and turns the tunnel into its territory. No way out. The blonde says he has one last move. He wants to use the train's power to simply run the creature over. There's a train stopped at a nearby station, but the girls are going to have to work hard to clear all that debris away. Nishi wonders whether they can handle it while Rikuto just watches everything going on. The guy explains that getting the train running will take time and that their job as hunters is to gather resources up above. He lays it out bluntly that his group is elite only and that anyone useless becomes monster bait. The kid is completely stunned. Nishi admits the situation is hell, but Rikuto knows there's no other choice. Now they just have to follow the rules and our boy knows rookies don't get to complain. But he senses a trap and finds it strange how these people are so upbeat and united. Dragons everywhere, and even so, these people are actually thrilled to march to their deaths. Nishi remembers that back at school no one wanted to take risks and guesses Hizaki must have an insanely strong leader's aura. But our MC noticed something much more sinister. If the worm is there, why hasn't it eaten everyone already? The guide immediately cuts off the conversation, asking what the newcomers are whispering about so much. The group keeps moving forward through this place that looks like a ghost station. Going up the escalators, he warns them that the exit to the surface is right there. The guy pulls out a flare and explains that the plan is to distract the wyverns so they can gather resources. But they're almost out of ammo, and asks if our jury can sense monsters. Look at the psycho face on this lunatic. The boys climb the stairs with their hearts in their throats, while the guide lets out a mocking little grin and tells them to make themselves useful. The guy asks if they're going to admit they're a bunch of trash, and Nishi whispers to Rikuto that these people are seriously messed up in the head. Our boy goes quiet, deep in thought, but then he suddenly steps up and says he'll go first, and everyone is left completely confused by the MC's sudden burst of courage. Even Ginkgo stops to take a closer look at the boy. The ugly guy mocks her, saying she's being too nice to the newbies, but she bluntly says she just doesn't want some amateur mistake getting the whole team killed. Our boy doesn't back down and says he's going too, even with Ginkgo complaining that he'll just get in the way. She asks if he's trying to play the knight, but Rikuto explains that having two scouts is safer since one can serve as bait if things go south. The silver-haired girl is left speechless by how cold that sounds, and ends up giving in, telling the MC to do whatever he wants. Nishi tries to go too, but Rikuto tells him to wait and assures him he won't die like some disposable pawn. In the end, she agrees and tells him to get moving already. 15 minutes of patrol and our G concludes that the alleys are the safest place. But then he sees his partner crouching in the corner. He asks what she's up to, and she warns him that this plant screams if you pull it out, like a mandrake in some witch movie. The protagonist immediately pulls out his knife because the warnings on the wall say to eliminate any intruder. He asks why she decided to come along if it's dangerous, and the platinum blonde tells him she doesn't need any hero. Rikuto explains that he needs to earn the others' trust, and that group unity is a necessary cost. He trusts Yamaoka to keep the others in line while they're gone. He asks if that logic makes sense, and the girl gets a little flustered by how cold he is. But the conversation dies when she suddenly moves, throwing a kick high into the air and starts spinning through the air right in front of Rikuto. She says even absurdity has its limits, and keeps flipping around, leaving the protagonist stunned. She attacks fast and comes down at him from above with full force. Our boy blocks with the pipe, but her agility is on another level. Rikuto realizes she's fast but has absolutely no technique. He lets his guard down and gets grabbed by the collar. He's slammed to the ground in the blink of an eye with a knife pressed to his neck. Like I said, you're weak. She says it straight to our boy's face, and then takes off. The platinum blonde starts climbing the building with absurd agility. Dear Lord, look at this ninja. The platinum blonde takes off, leaping across rooftops and leaves Rikuto on the ground, stunned by the humiliation. From above, she tells him he's dead weight, while he shouts that going alone is suicide, but the girl just smirks mockingly and tells him to knock her down first. She tells him to go back to the station and disappears, leaving the MC there alone, processing the rejection. On another rooftop, she pulls out binoculars and spots 3 giant dragons. That's when even her swagger disappears. Fuyus is up there on top, checking the map, convinced the dragons are easy to avoid as long as she keeps her distance. She decides to retreat but wants to stop somewhere and grab an item first. Even while jumping around, she keeps bragging, saying it was great to get rid of dead weight like Rikoto. The girl slips into an alley to take a shortcut but suddenly feels that something is wrong. A giant shadow blocks the way and the 3 dragons appear right in front of her. Look at the mess Fayu's got herself into with these mini wyverns, and she sees several eggshells on the ground and realizes the nest has already hatched just as one of them leaps at her. Then she remembers Arjai's warning saying it was stupid to go off alone and that logic doesn't work against them. But since she never expected anything from anyone, she ended up taking a bite to the shoulder, and now she's running away completely out of breath. On another rooftop, she pulls out binoculars and spots 3 giant dragons. She falls into the abyss feeling like she never had anyone by her side, and we see that her life at school was complete garbage. While everyone else was having fun, the jealous girls were calling her annoying and showy just because she was pretty, and saying even her eyes were freakish. They made up all kinds of absurd rumors just to isolate the girl by herself. But this whole mess started way earlier, back at this playground. At the playground, she was already sending bullies running, and the boys ran off apologizing for the beating. But when she tried to help the people who were on the ground, even they treated her like a monster. Seeing everyone run away from her, she accepted that she was a weirdo. Nobody wanted around. Back in the present, she's lying there on the ground swearing she'll never need anyone to save her. But she remembers the promise that she'd find a real friend while those creatures come down on her to finish everything. The creatures come in drooling, ready to deliver the final blow, and Fuyus had already accepted that she was going to die alone. But then, out of nowhere, a foot appears in the panel and Rakuto arrives, clearing the track with one perfectly timed strike. She goes into total shock. She asks what he's doing there, but the protag just tells her to stay still and not move. Our guy slips a hand into his coat and pulls out a flare he brought from the shop, then lights the thing without a hint of hesitation. The MC starts shouting to draw the creatures in, while Fuyus watches, unable to believe how crazy he is. She calls the protag an idiot for using light, since those pests are drawn to brightness. But that was exactly our guy's plan. He becomes the perfect bait to get them off the girl and runs into the middle of the hallway, drawing them all in. But one of the creatures is way too fast and manages to graze his face. Our boy realizes he won't be able to deal with them on foot. Rikuto keeps running at full speed but freezes when he notices something strange. He realizes not all the creatures were on his tail and looks up to see the swarm has spread out. There are wyverns everywhere, surrounding the alley. The monsters growl, ready to attack. He's surrounded with nowhere to run, but he tightens his grip on the iron pipe and gets ready. Meanwhile, Fuyus is still on the ground trying to crawl and wonders what this lunatic's plan is now. Fuyus can't believe Rikuto is being this stupid, and asks if he's gone suicidal. The sky is infested with those black shadows, and they aren't birds. The red wyverns come tearing in, ripping everything apart, and our boy runs in desperation. He begs his body not to give out now, but ends up taking a heavy blow from behind. The impact sends the kid flying. With his legs locked up, he wonders if this is the end. Rikuto stands frozen with death right in front of him, but the wyverns don't waste any time and move in for the kill. Our boy just stays there, face down on the ground. He lets out a smile and says it's checkmate. The game is over. Out of nowhere, a bizarre flash explodes between the buildings, and the light tears across the city sky. Fuyawasa has no idea what's going on. She curls up as the wind nearly rips her from where she is, and stays frozen there, feeling the blast's impact. Fuyusi is stunned by the deafening noise and rushes into the alley with a shit, looking for the MC. The silence after the explosion is bizarre. When she finally reaches the spot, she sees the wyverns are done for, but Rikuto is sprawled on the ground. The monsters are dead as hell. She stares at the protag's body, which is completely wrecked and bleeding from the ears. Beside him is an uprooted mandrake he used to unleash the lethal scream. Fuyusi is devastated, thinking he sacrificed himself to save her skin. The MC slowly opens his eyes and tries to sit up, realizing he's still alive. Fuyusi nearly jumps back in shock while stammering, unable to believe what she's seeing, and lets out a scream that echoes through the neighborhood. She asks how he's still breathing, but Rikuto can't hear a single thing, and she panics when she sees the blood running down. Our boy's plan was insane because he blew out his own eardrums to tank the plant. The flashback shows the sacrifice to escape the plant's deadly scream. And Faiz is in shock seeing that the kid is completely insane. He looks at her without hearing a thing. The girl freaks out, calling him crazy, and helps support our boy as he walks. She doesn't understand why he went so far for a stranger, but Rikuto is in total silence and she just accepts that she'll have to bear that burden. They make their way out of that filthy alley while the narrator questions why the hell this apocalypse even started. Rikuto still has that blank look on his face, and the girl wonders if she can finally tell him the whole truth. She remembers a cross necklace while the city outside is still a living hell. They reach the building, hearing screams about baby wyverns. Then 2 survivors show up, and one of them is practically losing it. The blonde guy with the scar, Ijima, says their hunting method is going to change now, and he immediately congratulates the kid on a job well done. Ijima gives Rikuto a hard slap on the back, and Fuyuse complains that the kid is already all banged up. People comment on how he's always reckless, but the protag can't even hear, so he just accepts the silence. 2 weeks later, the group becomes the elite of the place. Ijima leads the searches with flares. They haul the supply cart through the middle of the monsters, and Nishi keeps them safe with his bow, while Ijima clears the way with his staff. Even the platinum-haired girl has let her guard down, and now fights alongside our guy. Look at the sync between this duo as they tear through wyverns, while Katon and Sakura work their asses off digging to keep the base running. Every day is worse than the last, but seeing everyone resting together gives some hope. Overhaul, but the protag feels like something is wrong. A heavy atmosphere hanging over the survivors. He doesn't know where this bad vibe is coming from, and while walking with Nishi, my boy asks if his hearing has gone back to normal yet. Rikuto admits it's getting better, but he's still half deaf. Nishi sighs, wondering how long this rat-like life is going to last while the MC has no answer. But look at Nishi getting startled by a scream right nearby. It's Fuyusai being surrounded by some girls, and one of them tries to force her to drink something. The platinum-haired girl knocks the cup away. The girl starts completely losing it, screaming that Fuyusa's presence only reminds them how useless they are. Nishi runs over to help, but Fuyusa just gets up and says it was nothing. Nishi realizes she's just like Rikuto and hides how he feels. Rikuto notices something strange because Ijima and the upperclassmen are laughing for no reason while everyone else looks like they're at a funeral. He asks what's going on, and Nishi remembers that Hizaki guy gives bonuses to the top performers. Suddenly Fuyusei calls the protagonist over to talk, and Nishi freezes, thinking a confession is about to happen. At the excavation site, Sakura finishes wrapping Kotone's leg, and the two of them can't stop praising how that Hizaki guy is an angel. Hizaki shows up saying that excavation work is way too hard for girls. With that saintly little smile, he says he's transferring them both to the kitchen, and Sakura celebrates like she just hit the jackpot. But Kotone isn't buying it. The people around them look at them with a weirdly pitying expression, while the upperclassmen watch the path with the look of people who know something. The two head back to the shelter and find Rikuto and the rest of the group waiting. The MC immediately asks what Fuyusei wants to talk about, and she decides to get straight to the point. Fuyusei says she knows the truth behind the Great Calamity, and Nishi nearly falls over from the shock. She says she's almost certain about its origin, and that there's a man behind it all. The bastard's name is Kurogane Surato. Look at the terror in Rikuto's eyes. As the culprit's name echoes through the shelter, Nishi finds out that the MC has an adoptive brother. Our boy tries to say that's all in the past, but Kotone clearly remembers how that piece of trash used to walk all over him. Rikuto asks what she meant by Surato being involved in the end of the world, and she admits she doesn't know everything, but she's sure he's at the center of this disaster, and says it was because of that man that everything happened to her mother. Then the mood shifts and we go back in time, 1 week before the calamity to an ordinary day. Fuyus was just chilling at home, playing on her phone, complaining that those guys had shown up again. Slimes, golems, and wyverns that had killed her several times, but by now she had memorized every pattern and weakness they had. Slimes hate fire, so she goes in burning everything down and explains that even golems have a secret. Their weak point is the E on their forehead. Wyverns, meanwhile, are drawn to any kind of light, which makes it better to just avoid fighting them. Then the flashback cuts to Surato visiting Yukina in the hospital and talking about some kind of mythical summoning system. He praises her intelligence and offers her the best hospital possible. When she stays cold and says nothing, he decides to leave, saying her files are already enough. The Surato walks off saying he's the one who will change the world, and leaves Yukina there in total silence. In the hallway, he passes by Ginkgo without even noticing the girl. She enters the room wanting to know who that pushy guy was, but her mother brushes it off and says he was just a visitor. But right after that, she asks whether Ginkgo went to class today. The girl freezes and admits she didn't. She says the classroom is full of idiots and it's boring. Her mother bluntly tells her that with that attitude she'll never make friends, and ends by making a funny face to try to get a smile out of her daughter. Ginkgo says friends are just a hassle, and that she's perfectly fine on her own. But Yukina tells it like it is, asking why she always helps people in trouble. Then, her mother says she has a huge heart, and that one day she'll find someone who truly understands her. She assures her that soon she'll have a great friend. To change the subject, the girl brings up the game her mother created, that MSF's thing, and says she finally soloed the Northern Region boss, which leaves Yukina stunned, since she designed that stage to be a nightmare. The game has no levels or magic, just pure strategy using everyday items. Ginkgo brings up another topic while we see the hospital from the outside, asking if the game Sylvia was based on her. She says the game is amazing, but it's incomplete, and gets curious about what the ending would have been. But her mother stays mysterious and says it's an industry secret, leaving the girl annoyed. All she wanted was to enjoy the time she had left with her mother, but fate had other plans for the world. Then one day, without warning anyone, the real apocalypse finally arrived. The world turned into an RPG lobby, and Ginkgo freezes as dragons and ogres start appearing out of nowhere. Everything is on fire. The whole place turned into a slaughterhouse with monsters devouring and burning people without mercy. Ginkgo is left in shock. She sees the phones lying around where the monsters came from, and she notices something bizarre. She knows these creatures, from the lizard to the harpy, because they're from the game her mother created. The shock hits instantly when she remembers her mother, but she immediately runs off to try to find her. Only a scream cuts her off. Goblins cornering the girls. Good lord, look at the luck on these survivors. She remembers people like that calling her a freak and thinks about just walking away. But her mother's advice speaks louder. Then the goblins notice there's one more person there. One of them immediately leaps at her with a club in hand, and our girl feels that the bloodlust is real now. But she's already soloed thousands of these in video games, so she lands a perfect kick right in the creature's balls. The creature drops, drooling, and she immediately charges at the rest. The creature is strong, but its stamina is human, so our girl takes advantage and wears the punk out. She dives straight at another one and locks the goblin's neck in a brutal rear naked choke until the creature finally blacks out. But when she finishes clearing them out and looks around, she realizes she didn't make it in time to save the girls. She quietly apologizes, heart in her throat, holding the knife as she stares at the blood on the floor. The trail of blood doesn't stop, and she keeps moving, seeing that the city has turned into an all-you-can-eat buffet, with three-eyed wolves and slimes devouring everyone. Our girl reaches the hospital on a prayer, and barges in already slicing up a lizard man. The hospital is pure chaos, full of dead creatures, and she keeps running in desperation. She bursts into the room calling for her mother, but finds only emptiness and the curtain blowing. The room is intact, without a drop of blood, leaving G totally confused. She hears some grumbling coming from the closet and opens the door, coming face to face with her mother, who's in there typing and cursing Serato. The woman explains that her PC is the only one left and gets startled when her daughter yells for them to get out. Ginkgo holds out her hand, but the old lady is at her limit. She insists there's something important she has to finish, but Ginkgo warns that they'll be devoured if they stay there. Her mother finally agrees and says she can't die there, but out of nowhere, something huge crashes through the wall, destroying everything with a monstrous claw. The two of them are stunned by the creature's size and realize it's a giant scorpion. Ginkgo recognizes the monster as a sub-boss from the game, but then the creature stomps her laptop to pieces. "My PC," the old lady screams in despair, while her daughter draws her knife to protect her. "It's now or never." Ginkgo tells the old lady to stay calm and leave it to her while she analyzes the giant scorpion. She remembers that this creature was a nightmare in the game, but knows it has a weak point right in its shell. But if she misses her strike, the tail will pierce her chest, and she looks at her mother, who won't stop coughing. The woman apologizes for being a burden, and Ginkgo realizes escape is impossible. She tightens her grip on the knife and charges just as the pincer comes tearing through the floor. The creature attacks, and Ginkgo tries to counterattack with the perfect timing she learned in the game. But she steps wrong on a rock, and the plan falls apart instantly. She does manage to drive the knife in, but it wasn't deep enough. The pincer comes like a truck and crushes the poor girl with full force. She coughs up blood, and I wouldn't be able to handle that. The stinger rises to finish her off and comes down like lightning toward Ginkgo. She freezes on the spot as death approaches, but Yukina looks back with a smile and jumps in front to take the hit. The stinger pierces Yukina's chest, and Ginkgo falls into total despair. Blood goes everywhere while she stabs the claw, and the creature lets out a victorious roar. The monster lets our girl go, and Ginkgo leaps up in pure desperation. Outside, the hospital is surrounded by dragons while the giant scorpion finally blacks out. Our girl runs to hold her mother and freaks out looking for an antidote that doesn't exist. The damage to her chest is fatal, but Yukina still tries to comfort her daughter with a gentle touch. She asks forgiveness for everything and says the deaths of all those people are her fault. Her mother tells her to take a pendant and reveals that it's an SD card with the truth about everything. "It's our only hope," she says, coughing up blood, telling our girl to go to Amashima City. She says Serato planned this whole mess while Ginkgo begs her to stop talking. With one last effort, her mother says she loves her and that she has always been very proud. She thought she was prepared. The woman apologizes for being a burden and dies in her arms. It was all too fast and too cruel. And that's how Ginkgo finishes telling how the nightmare began. Nishi realizes that if they want answers, Amashima City is where they need to go, while the rest of the group is left somewhat lost trying to process so much information. She says they don't have to believe her if they don't want to, but Rikudo says plainly that he trusts her, and that they'll go together. Ginkgo is left speechless by our protagonist's attitude. She lets out a sigh and says he's an idiot with way too soft a heart. Meanwhile, in some office, we see a blue notebook on top of the desk. Hizaki and Ijima are having a little chat, and the redhead says everyone is making excellent progress. But just look at that villain face. The guy talks about bonuses in a sinister tone. The next day, Nishi and Rika are stuck doing the hard labor while some lazy veterans stand around laughing and acting like they own the street. It's a bizarre contrast between those who work their asses off and those who just watch. They comment that anyone who doesn't earn bonuses will be sent to the keepers, and Rikuto notices that this atmosphere is way too strange for his liking. The weird thing is that with so many rotten people gathered together, order is still maintained without any fights and with equal rations for everyone. To Rikuto, this place seems ideal for some, but he still has that nagging feeling about Ginkgo. A scream interrupts his thoughts, and they come face to face with the upperclassman harassing one of the girls. Our boy realizes this kind of trash happens there all the time. Nishi calls him over to put a stop to it, and Rikuto immediately tells the guys to let the girl go. The masked freak tries to act tough with him, but the MC's stare is so dark that the guy feels the weight of his aura. The other asshole yells at them not to get cocky just because of the bonuses. Then Yuneda shows up, telling the guys to stop messing up the order, and apologizes to the girl with that fake little smile. She just trembles in fear. The upperclassman takes his lackeys away and says that soon everyone will accept Hizaki's so-called order. Rikuto doesn't understand any of what they're talking about, but when he tries to help the girl, she lets out a terrified scream. Out of nowhere, this old man shows up, shoving our protagonist away and throws himself in front of his daughter while she tries to explain the help. But he says the MC is trash just like the others. Rikuto asks if the guy is the girl's father, and bluntly says he should have been the first one to protect his own daughter. The old man stammers in pure rage, but Sana grabs him, begging him to stop, and says it's okay while her father can only hug the girl and apologize. Nishi tells the protagonist to get out of there, but fear is spread everywhere, and there's a guy near the fire practically having a breakdown from sheer terror of being the next one to turn into a keeper. Kotone shows up with a plate of food and asks if the kid is okay, and gives him that angelic smile. The guy turns bright red and stammers that everything's fine while our girl explains that she helps in the kitchen now. He asks if she really became a cook and she confirms it. Then Sakura shows up yelling that Rikuto and the others finally came back. But just look at the way this lunatic is watching Kotone from behind. The guy is completely unhinged, drooling and planning something bizarre and feels like his time there is running out. It's all very strange. Nishi says it's straight. Something seriously messed up is going on in this place. He's already wondering if it wouldn't be better to get out of there. Aisei comments that all of this must be connected to the boss's bonuses. Rikuto asks Foyos what kind of cult this is, but she freezes up. In the middle of the conversation, Sakura and Kodon show up with the food. The archer is already all fired up to eat, but Fuyusei goes into total shock. She wants to know why the two of them became waitresses. Sakura explains that Hizaki transferred them to the kitchen to spare Kodon's leg, which had been injured. And the blonde guy even says digging holes isn't work for a girl. Fuyusei is absolutely seething with hatred for Hizaki and runs off, leaving everyone behind. Nishi even tries to call out to the girl, but she's already worked up, desperate to know what this guy is planning and determined to force him to cancel that transfer. But halfway there, she hears laughter and freezes. In another room, Ijima bluntly tells Hizaki that he's a pretty rotten guy for hiding everything from the others. The redhead tells him to be quiet, but the blonde knows no one will show up at dinner time. Then Hizaki explains that they just need to detach the rear cars of the train. Hizaki explains that since the master key disappeared, they need to mess with the wiring. But then the guy pulls the key out of his pocket and starts laughing. He says that what he really wants is to build a beautiful system where everyone helps each other. But Ginko bursts into the room by kicking the door open and leaves Ijima completely stunned. She demands to know why they're living like animals in this hole, while that bastard redhead just stands there with that mocking little smile. She demands an answer at the top of her lungs, and Hizaki just signals for Ijima to calm down. Then the guy starts telling a little story, while placing a black box on the table. Hizaki starts with some self-help nonsense about Pandora's box and says some idiot opened it and spread despair across the world. But at the bottom of the box, so-called hope still remained, and he finishes the story with the most cynical tone imaginable. Fuyusei doesn't understand any of it, but then he drops the poison. What was left at the bottom wasn't hope at all. He explains that people only have hope because they don't know the truth, and he says outright that the city of Amashima is Pandora's box itself. To him, the base is the only place with order and happiness, and the rest of the world is just digging its own grave chasing a miracle. The scarred man laughs, saying the redhead has no shame, and Hizaki doesn't even care, saying he loves the life he has now. He says they have everything there, even rare entertainment. Meanwhile, Ginko can only stand there breaking out in a cold sweat. Hizaki then ignores her shock and asks if she'll keep helping the group like before. He says he's even willing to make some special arrangements for her. The girl thinks about her friends, and the despair hits hard. He holds out his hand, waiting for her answer, but a scream of monsters cuts through the conversation and leaves the poor girl in shock. Out of nowhere, a strange noise echoes, and a giant worm bursts through the wall. Everyone goes into full panic mode, and worms start popping up from every direction. It's total chaos, and one poor guy gets impaled without a chance. The protagonist arrives at the scene already, bringing the iron pipe down on the abomination's head. Nishi isn't falling behind either, and he's already readying his arrow, asking where all these creatures came from. Rikuto realizes that if there are baby wyverns, there are baby worms too, while Sakura tries to run from this bizarre new ecosystem. Katone yells at her to get out of the way, and the sound of destruction reaches the bosses. Ginko is stunned by all the screaming and takes off running. Ijima is already getting out of there too, but the redhead stops him to talk about Ginko. He says she'll just end up being a burden, and with that psychotic little smile tells the guy to kill her. Ijima thinks the redhead is a psychopath, and the two burst out laughing, but Scar laments it because he wanted to see Ginko crying like the others. Hizaki says it can't be helped, and leaves the job to him. Meanwhile, the giant worms are terrorizing the girls, and one of them is already about to grab Sana. But then someone comes flying in with a kick, and Ginko lands a perfect punch right in the creature's face. Without mercy, she immediately slices the worm apart. Sana just stands there in shock while the girl faces the rest of the horde and tells her to run to the central gate because it's safe there. Ginko tells Sana to get off the tracks now and screams at her to get out of there right now. The girl runs off thanking her, while the platinum-haired girl knife in hand stays behind to hold the line. But the worms keep popping up and she realizes she forgot that light doesn't drive these things away. Meanwhile, Nishi and the others are in deep trouble trying not to become a snack. Nishi complains that there's not a single moment of peace in this end of the world. Then Ijima shows up, crushing a worm's head, and Hizaki arrives asking what the situation is. Weak creatures, that's what Ijima says, but Hizaki is already focused on the station's division. Meanwhile, on the south side, people are being devoured by the worms. The redhead puts on an act and decides to abandon the south side, leaving Rakuto in shock. Nishi asks if he's insane, but the guy says he's being rational. The plan is to save the useful ones, like the hunters and cooks, and leave the old and wounded behind, because they're dead weight. They were horrified. With that cynical smile, he says it's all for the sake of order. Rakuto doesn't think twice and immediately takes off down the tunnel, while Nishi says he'll be right behind him. But the path is infested, and the worms keep appearing, and the archer tells our boy not to die before he gets there. Hidden there, Ginkgo watches the protagonist heading straight for the south sector. Look at the chaos the south sector has become. People are getting snatched from every side. Sana tries to drag her injured father away, but they end up getting knocked to the ground. Sana's father is at his limit and begs his daughter to run and save herself. But a giant worm leaps at them, and Rakuto charges in at full force to slam the metal pipe into the creature's face. The kid is unstoppable. He tells the two of them to get out of there while he holds things off, but the old man doesn't understand why he came to save them. He says they're burdens and that the natural thing would be to abandon those who are useless, but Rakuto tells it like it is. That's animal logic. Rakuto says it straight. They're still human and helping others is the bare minimum. The heroic moment doesn't last long because everything starts shaking and the ground cracks. Our boy looks back in shock and sees Fuyus running and warning that the place is going to collapse. But the asphalt gives way instantly and swallows the MC halfway there. He falls to the floor below, while Ginkgo desperately tries to reach him. Rakuto is rattled by the size of the hole, while Fuyus grabs his hand and explains that the worms ate away at the place's foundation and says she's going to pull him up. But she realizes the ground is far too unstable for her to hold on alone, and asks the two survivors for help. Right then, a third person appears, saying he'll help. But it's that bastard Ijima, who immediately comes in with a brutal kick to the girl's back. He says his foot slipped while the two of them plunge into the abyss, and just look at the psychotic face on this lunatic. Sana's father is in shock, not understanding what Hizaki's executioner is doing there. Ijima pretends to be upset and asks if they don't agree that it's such a shame. He squares up against the survivors and Sana's father gives in immediately. The coward leaves to report the accident and leaves the two of them lying there on the ground. But the tunnel is collapsing too, with rocks falling everywhere. The place has become a death trap, and Nishi panics, calling out for our boy. The ceiling suddenly starts cracking and the archer freezes when he sees the structure giving way. Rocks start raining down on their heads and the guys can only curl up as everything collapses. The tunnel is caving in with the giant worms completely wrecking the foundation. Back at the base, the news reaches Kotone, and the blonde explains that Hizaki confirmed the accident. Look at that little smile on that red-headed bastard in the background. What a piece of shit. Kotone collapses to her knees while her friend tries to swear our boy wouldn't die like that. Suddenly the curtain opens and this bunch of weirdos storms into the tent. Sakura tries to stand up to them, but the glasses-wearing brat just lets out a bizarre laugh. Chaos breaks out along with cries for help. Within seconds, the two of them are already tied up and gagged on the floor.
The nerd grabs Kothon by the hair, saying that since the world is over, they should have a little fun.
And the bastard starts by tearing the poor girl's blouse. Good lord. Look at the size of the talon in that neckline. The guy completely lost it. The chubby one doesn't waste any time either and starts tearing Sakura's blouse too. Looks like he really wants to join the breast milk village. These guys are completely lost in their madness, and all Koton can do is call out for Rakuto. The nerd tells her to behave with the face of someone who's never seen a woman in his life. They think that because the world ended and there are no more rules, they can do whatever they want. The brat is completely out of his mind and he's practically licking the poor girl already. So disgusting. A gunshot silences the chatter and the brat freezes when he sees who's at the door. Hizaki asks what's going on in there, while the other chubby guy is already done for, with a hole right in the middle of his forehead. With that same macabre little smile as always, he explains that he understands very well how people lose control when order collapses. The nerd swears it was just a moment of weakness, but he's practically having a breakdown from fear as he crawls on the floor. Then Hizaki presses the gun barrel against his head, and the bastard still has the nerve to say they're just cooks and that they deserve to feel good. Unacceptable. Hizaki explains that order has to be absolute for them to keep being human. He calls the brat a fool and blows his brains out without blinking. Blood even splattered onto the screen. Gross. Animals have no place in his community. The two girls are left stunned, watching the execution from up close. The psychopath even apologizes for the disturbance while other men enter the tent. He says the group's order has been shaken and needs an immediate resolution, and offers the girls as a reward to Ijima and the other veterans. Just look at that guy's little grin. Hizaki is standing there with that psychopath smile, asking if the girls are going to cooperate willingly. But our guy is a little busy down there in the middle of the rubble. He and Ginkgo managed to get out in one piece, but they fell straight into a nest of worm eggs. Jesus, that's disgusting. The MC asks if she knows where she's going, and she explains that she memorized all the maps of this area. Rishinu says he's going to make Ijima pay for kicking them down there, and the girl decides to come clean about what goes on in that so-called community. Rikudo tells her to keep going while Sana's father cries on the floor, apologizing for being a coward. The guy freezes when the MC shows up alive, unable to believe he came back from the abyss. Rikudo doesn't want to hear any talk and heads straight into the sector where barbarity is running wild. Look at the face of this sicko licking the girl. It's a festival of cowardice with people screaming for help until Kotone and Sakura ask if he came to rescue them. With rewards like these, I'd come back from hell too. Hizaki gives a cynical little smile when he sees Rikudo survived and immediately says the best are receiving their bonus now. The MC asks if this is what he calls order and tells him in this breast milk village to go to hell. The redhead just lets out a little laugh, saying the boy is far too young to understand the beauty of the system. Rikudo points the metal pipe at the villain, while Hizaki starts going on philosophically about what defines a human being. To him, the answer is order, and with that, the henchmen already jump in to pin our protagonist down. Ijima is there laughing at the immobilized brat, while the other veterans comment that the protagonist is dangerous for having almost dodged a bullet. But they're using Kotone and Sakura as hostages to keep him in check. With talent like that, I wouldn't want to let them out of my sight either. Hizaki gets right up close, lifting our guy's face and starts preaching that he created a utopia where people can be truly human. He even praises Rikudo's reflexes and asks if the boy wants to switch sides. But the MC just lets out a dry laugh and explains that all this so-called order is a blatant lie. While the girls watch in shock, he finishes by saying Hizaki is nothing but a soulless monster. Hizaki really didn't like being called a beast. Ijima immediately kicks the protagonist in the face, so he'll learn to respect the boss. Then the other cowards take the chance to vent their anger on the immobilized boy. Kotone and Sakura fall into despair at the sight, and right then, Ginko and the useless teacher appear at the door. The redhead notices the audience has grown and Ginko is left shaken when she sees Rikudo's condition. With a macabre smile, Hizaki explains that all of this is for order and announces that our guy will be the next keeper of the round. He tells everyone to gather and watch the show. Our guy is there on the edge, realizing things just got serious when a colossal worm rises from the abyss to feed. Total panic. Hizaki explains that the monster only stops when its belly is full and says it's straight, there's no more talking. The girls scream in despair as they see the kid in the beast's sights. Ginko appears, shouting for Rikudo to surrender and offers to become a slave just to spare him. But our boy doesn't care at all. He turns his back and says he doesn't need that. Ginko asks if he isn't afraid of dying and our boy admits that he is, but while everyone watches in shock, he remembers that he finally wants to live like a real person. The kid faces the giant worm and says he's going to defeat the beast while Ginko calls him crazy. Just look at that empty stare on Rikudo's face. The guy seriously doesn't care anymore. While the girls in the back can do nothing but cry, and Yoneda is already losing patience with all the talking and brings his club down on him, telling him to pipe down. Yoneda doesn't even see where it came from when Ginko lands a brutal kick right in the middle of his face. The bastard goes flying straight into the giant worm's mouth and the damage is massive. Our boy looks back, kind of confused, while the girl remembers her mother and decides to stop fooling herself. Now she's ready to jump into the fight with him, and the protag even mocks her, calling her stupid. But the others are already closing in to make them pay, and Hizaki says, anyone who breaks the rules has no place in his community. Rikudo wastes no time, and swings a heavy blow to clear a path, while Ginko comes in, slicing through everyone with her knife, without mercy. The extras are stunned by the two of them and start wondering if they're even human. Then Ijima shows up laughing in everyone's face and tells the cowards to stop shaking. He reminds them that they have the numbers advantage, and that it's only a matter of time before the two of them get tired. One of the brutes takes the opening and lands a heavy blow on our boy, making him lose his balance while Ginko screams his name. Another one is already on top of her, asking if she really has time to look away, and she lands a hit that knocks the breath out of him. Now the villain is hyping up the troops to finish the two kids off already. The net is closing in and the two of them are already at their limit, while Hizaki watches from the sidelines, reloading his gun with that grin of someone who's loving the chaos. Kotone and Sakura fall into despair, seeing the state our boy is in. Sana's father and the rest of the group can only watch with the look of people who've already given up on everything. They don't understand why the MC and Ginko are still trying to fight while everyone else just accepts being trampled. Even completely beaten up, Rikudo says flat out that fighting is the only way he can feel truly alive, and that line hits the conscience of everyone just standing there hard. Blood sprays everywhere, and out of nowhere someone yells for them to let him go. The bald guy and Ijima finally manage to wear Ginko down, and Hizaki tells Rikudo straight that the ending of this fight was decided from the start. The kid is completely spent. The girls can only watch, tied up and unable to do anything. The blonde guy tells the other veteran to finish off the MC already, but Ginko doesn't care about herself at all and only screams Rikudo's name. The enforcer sneers and presses the nail bat against the girl's neck, saying she'll be the group's new toilet, making us sick of this guy while the big guy pins her arms and the psychopath gets ready to pay attention to our girl. But the game changes when a club suddenly comes flying out of nowhere. Ijima doesn't even finish laughing before he takes a smack to the back of the head. The guy glitches out, bleeding and trying to figure out which genius did that. He collapses to the ground while the big guy freezes in shock, still holding Ginko. Even Rikuto has no idea what's going on. Look at Sana's father. The guy finally found the courage to defend his own skin. He tells everyone to go to hell, and the other survivors come right behind him with bloodlust in their eyes. It's pure concentrated chaos, with blood flying everywhere because the riot has truly begun, and the veterans are getting the beating of a lifetime. Sana's father asks for forgiveness for taking so long to act. The old man is possessed, crushing those guys without mercy, and shouts that he should have fought sooner, but now he'll protect Sana to the very end. Even the girls are done being punching bags and are smashing bricks into the veterans' faces. Ginko is left speechless, seeing the women she saved apologizing because they knew she was killing herself, trying to protect everyone, but their fear of Ijima was stronger. Then Sana's father rallies the group, saying their living dead life is over and that they're going to reclaim their dignity and truly live. It's a horde of furious people charging at the hunters, and the guys never even saw the blow coming. The veterans retreat in total panic and end up falling straight into the hole the worms opened. While the gang gets wrecked, Hizaki is there, calm, gun in hand. He realizes the hostages are worthless now. He has only one target now, Kurogane Rakuto. To the psychopath, if the leader falls, the revolt collapses on the spot. With that villainous grin, he cocks the pistol and takes aim to land the final one-shot on our boy Ginko. Catches on to what he's about to do and panics. She screams, warning that he's being targeted. Rakuto senses the danger, while Ginko yells at him to watch his aim. Too late. Rakuto senses the danger, while Ginko yells at him to watch his aim. Too late. Hizaki delivers his final goodbye with his finger on the trigger. Our girl tries the impossible, but she's not going to make it in time. The sound echoes and blood splatters, and she freezes on the spot, thinking the protagonist is done for. But Rakuto is still standing, with only a graze. The villain is the one howling, his hand pierced by an arrow, and Nishi emerges from the shadows, asking what this mess is. Nishi makes it clear that he's already chosen Rakuto's side, and the girls are almost crying with joy seeing that backup has arrived. Takeshi is here too, cleaning house, and Isaac shows up right after, beating down the veterans without a shred of mercy. He runs to free the two of them. Afterward, he explains that he saved everyone during the collapse, but that they had to tank some wyverns to make it back to the subway. And Isaac asks what the next step is, and the MC tells him to wipe out Hizaki and the rest of the gang once and for all. The archer agrees immediately, while Takeshi keeps handing out beatdowns. Now it's the moment when the extras finally work up some courage and come reinforce the attack against the veterans, while the gang falls into total panic. Hizaki realizes he's lost, and decides to slip away quietly, leaving his lackey talking to himself. He runs, remembering that the only thing that matters now is the train key. The villain still sneers, asking if it's Rakuto again. Ginko screams for the MC not to let the bastard escape with the key, but Nishi can't take the shot because allies and enemies are all mixed together. The rest can only stand there hoping, scared to death. Good lord, look at how stacked those two are. Meanwhile, Teishi keeps crushing the veterans, and Hizaki asks if the protagonist really thinks he can solo him alone. The guy boasts that his injured hand changes nothing, but the MC says he's going to win. The real one-on-one begins with Rakuto facing down the barrel of the pistol. Our boy charges in with everything he's got, ignoring the danger to close the distance. The villain pulls the trigger without hesitation, and the bullet barely grazes the kid's head. Hizaki keeps that mocking look on his face and says it straight. A gun isn't that scary when you understand how it works. Rakuto focuses completely on the barrel of the pistol, reading every movement of the villain through its reflection. He believes the trajectory is predictable, but the villain explains that the earlier shots were just to study him, like in a game of chess where he already foresaw the ending. And now he prepares the checkmate, aiming exactly where the MC's heart will be. Hizaki pulls the trigger to end it all, and immediately declares checkmate with that little winner's grin. The shot lands dead on, and Ginko falls into total despair, screaming our boy's name. But Rakuto doesn't fall and pushes forward with the iron pipe ready to return the favor. The villain can't understand a thing, completely baffled as to how the MC is still standing. Our boy reveals that he used a piece of concrete to tank the shot. He asks if Hizaki was aiming for his heart, and brings the pipe down with everything he's got to end the conversation. The impact is so strong that the master key flies out of his pocket, and the bastard is sent straight into the abyss. He's done for. Rakuto tells him the game is over for him, and Ginko gets all flustered by the sheer aura our boy is giving off. Hizaki plummets into the abyss, remembering his father saying that order is what separates man from beast. The old man used to say that without rules, people turn into animals and that laws exist to protect that balance. Flashback to our villain's past. While his mother cries her eyes out, the boy already has that dead fish stare, hearing that anyone who breaks order is pure evil. Cut to school, where a blonde bully is humiliating everyone. The teacher tries to intervene, but the kid is the heir of some big shot and threatens to ruin his life before throwing a punch. Everyone freezes, while little Hizaki just watches from afar. But the game changes that night with someone screaming in pain, while they shout that what Hizaki is doing is wrong. And now, as he falls into the abyss, all the guy can do is laugh. In the flashback, Hizaki goes on with that classic villain speech, saying that Rakuto is nothing but an animal in human skin. But just look at the irony. The one who ended up becoming beast food was him, and it was an ugly end, being swallowed alive by the worm. Our boy just stares into the silence below, while the villain's bootlickers go into shock. The uprising finishes off the remaining veterans, and in the middle of the chaos, Ginko retrieves the master key and can't believe it. She looks at Rakuto, who's there, exhausted, but finally free. Ginkgo explains that it wasn't his fault, and our boy says it straight that he's okay and decided to live to the very end. The girl turns bright red, calling the MC strong, and says he can always come to her whenever he needs to vent. But the cute moment ends in shock when they reach the edge of the hole. The giant worm has simply vanished and left behind nothing but a pile of skeletons. Ginkgo can't make sense of it, since those things aren't supposed to move in the light. Good lord, look at how stacked Kotone is, even in that oversized vest, while she thanks Takeshi for lending her the clothes. Sakura is all flustered thanking the blonde guy, but then everything shakes. Nishi goes pale, asking if it's another collapse, and the missing monster bursts up from the ground. Kotone and the group are left speechless, staring at that purple mouth full of teeth that should not be in the light. Look at the size of that maw. The beast lets out a bizarre roar. Sakura freezes when she sees it's not just the big one, but that it brought a whole litter of hungry babies. The beast is on the loose and it's already making a meal out of everyone. One of the girls tries to run away while the giant worm dives back into the ground. Nishi and Ginkgo can't make sense of any of it, and Sakura says it might be breeding season. Not even the light can hold these things back anymore. The archer asks the MC what to do, and Ginkgo remembers the train is their way out since Hizaki said it was working. Rikuto doesn't want to hear any more talk and tells everyone to get out now that the tracks to Amashima are clear. Nishi steps up to organize the chaos and tells everyone to run for the train before the beast gets them for good. The survivors can't believe they're finally getting out of this crazy cult, and they take off running in the middle of the chaos. Sana helps her father walk, while everyone helps each other so no one gets left behind. Even the cowardly veterans start begging for help, and Ijima is left there sprawled out, getting a taste of his own medicine. The extra calls him trash, but the other guy says that if they leave him there, they'll be just like the villains. The guy still smiles in that bizarre way and swears he'll take control of everything again. Little does he know, dinner has arrived. The giant worm appears right in front of him, and the guy just says it's too late to save this worm now. Look at the level of trash this guy is, treating women like animals. He used to kick the poor victims toward the monster and celebrate with his buddies like it was a holiday. Look at the size of that maw. The worm comes right up, drooling over Ijima, who screams desperately for someone to help him. Too late. The monster bites down hard and rips one of his arms clean off. While the villain becomes dinner, the rest of the group crowds onto the platform, and Ginkgo says the inside of the train is safe. Nishi tells everyone to get in fast while this guy tries to hold the line using brass knuckles. Our boy comes in slicing up whatever appears in front of him. One of the boys asks what they should do about the buried cars, and Ginkgo replies that the only way is to cut the cables and abandon them. Ginkgo finds the coupling to separate the cars left behind and pulls the lever with all her strength until the mechanism releases. Nishi yells for her to jump inside already, while the people in there look like they've been through hell. Our girl runs to the driver's cabin to see if they can get out now, but Coldham says the key isn't starting anything. Ginkgo freezes on the spot. If that light goes out now, they're screwed. But Sakura doesn't waste any time and starts opening the panel to see if the problem is in the wiring. Someone sabotaged the wiring on purpose, and Ginkgo grits her teeth thinking about that piece of trash. Hizaki, but Sakura doesn't get shaken at all and assures them she can fix it in the blink of an eye. While she works, the others can only wait anxiously. On the platform, Rikuto and the guys hold off the worms. In the middle of the darkness, the train is still sitting there, but Sakura finishes the job and tells Katon to start it. Now it'll work. The lights flicker and the people in the car can hardly believe it, and our prodigy technician takes the chance to show off a little. Sakura looks at the boy and realizes the mood is getting strange. She starts freaking out, saying that while she understands wiring, driving the train is not her thing. Then a shadow appears in the middle of the argument, and the teacher explains that he knows how to operate the system. But the peace doesn't last long when a giant worm appears, drooling. Nishi and Riko are at their limit, surrounded by these pests that keep popping up. Suddenly the ground explodes and an even bigger beast appears to turn everything into dinner. A desperate Nishi asks Riko what the plan is. And behind them, the train finally starts showing signs of life. The train finally starts moving and the trio runs in desperation while the giant worm almost swallows them whole. They reach the door and the girls grab the guy's hands with all their strength. They made it. Outside, the monsters are left behind as the train disappears into the tunnel. The giant beast stays there screaming in rage over losing its dinner. Riko asks if everything's okay, and Nishi confirms that even the injured managed to board. Sana's father takes the controls and the people in the car finally breathe a sigh of relief. Sakura immediately jumps in to hug Kotone, shouting that they did it. Even Nishi is all giddy, thinking the worst is over, and everyone starts congratulating each other. But the peace doesn't last long because the train starts shaking violently. A girl comes running in desperation, warning that something's wrong, and points toward the back where a giant black spike has pierced through the floor of the car. The giant worm pierces through the floor and it looks like the train has turned into a sardine can in its hands. Everyone panics seeing that mouthful of teeth coming straight at them. The group is paralyzed by the sight while he warns that the train is going to derail. Nishi is already losing it with this worm, but Riko already pulls out the pipe and runs toward the danger, and she follows him without even thinking, telling everyone to get to the next car right now. Riko runs to save the extra, while the giant worm was about to make its lunch. The kid speeds up and flies to shove the iron pipe down the creature's throat. He tells the guy to get out of there and tries to hold back the worm, which won't stop thrashing around. Just look at the size of those claws. The MC holds his ground with the pipe almost bending and feels that the weight is insane. Everyone is in shock watching Rico alone while he yells for them to uncouple the car. The kid is focused and says he'll hold the creature back. They hesitate, afraid of leaving him behind. But Ginkgo is already running to try to release the lock and tries to pull the iron bar with all her might, but it's completely rusted and won't budge. Then Tekshi comes over to help and puts in a monstrous effort to uncouple the car. The blonde kid yells that he'll help too, and Ginkgo sees the others coming. But Rico is in serious trouble because the car is way too cramped for the MC to dodge. The creature attacks and nearly sends him flying. Now the whole group is united, putting in an absurd amount of strength with Takeshi and Sakura pulling with everything they've got. The pin finally gives way. Everyone cheers that the lock came loose and the cars begin to separate. Nishi screams for Rico to jump already, but one of the creature's claws has already slashed the kid's leg. The archer watches the desperation from afar while the worm opens that huge mouth full of teeth. The protagonist tries to back away and Katone is already panicking as she sees Rico getting cornered. He's being dragged deeper in but squeezes the iron pipe with the last of his strength. He says he won't give up and then Ginkgo jumps back in to slice up the worm. Ginkgo comes in tearing through and drives the knife into the creature with all her might. Rikuto can't believe she came back into danger, and she immediately grabs the kid by the shoulder saying they're going to Amashima together and he won't die alone. The two of them start running for the leap of faith, while Nishi and the blonde kid watch in a cold sweat at the distance. Rikuto tells her to jump first, but the girl calls him an idiot and tells him to leave it to her, asking him to trust her one more time. The MC gives that little grin of someone who has a plan, and Ginkgo confirms that she trusts him completely. With the giant creature almost swallowing them both, they throw themselves into the leap of faith. Nishi stretches out his arm from the train, but everyone panics when they see how huge the gap is. To make matters worse, the track curves and they're headed straight for the wall. They slam hard into the tunnel wall, but Rikuto yells for no one to underestimate him and starts running along the wall to reach the car. The kid is running on the wall like Spider-Man, but Nishi yells that he won't make it. In the middle of the jump, the protagonist thanks Ginkgo for believing in him. He uses the iron pipe to push off the wall and reaches his hand out to Nishi with everything he's got. The train keeps speeding toward the exit, while the giant worm lets out one last roar of rage and is left behind in the darkness of the tunnel. They made it. They finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. The train finally comes out of that cursed darkness and silence takes over the car while Nishi is completely drained, sweating cold. Everyone is sprawled on the floor trying to process that they're still alive while the protagonist says he can't believe they survived. Katone gets emotional seeing that everyone is okay and the rest of the group just breathes in relief. Our boy thanks Ginkgo for jumping back in and she gives it to him straight, saying she was just returning the favor. But you can tell the atmosphere between them has completely changed. Ginkgo remembers that after her mother died she had given up on this world because she thought it was all garbage. Rikuto asks if she changed her mind and the girl gets all flustered. "Fine, it's not that bad," she shouts, dying of embarrassment. The protagonist says straight up that they'll survive no matter what, and just look at how happy everyone is seeing that they have a chance. He holds out his fist and says it's good to be alive, and Ginkgo turns red as a tomato at the cheesy line. But in the end, she accepts the fist bump and calls him an idiot, and the train keeps going toward the FN Corp building where the mystery began. Finally in Amashima City, Nishi and Rikuto comment that the trip was long as hell. Kotone and the rest of the group admit that the whole ordeal was way too intense. The car is full of people who managed to escape hell, but Ginkgo can only focus on the pendant which holds the secret of her mother. Our boy Raikuto comes over to support her, saying she's not alone, and the silver-haired girl turns bright red, blurting out that he's way too bold. Meanwhile, Kotone just watches the mood, feeling like her place in the MC's life is slipping away. The wheels screech on the rails, throwing Ginkgo and Raikuto forward with the jolt. The group sprawls onto the floor in shock while sparks fly along the way. Then the silver-haired girl remembers what her mother said at the hospital, that the SD card holds the truth and the hope to save the world. She tries to hide her face so no one sees how shaken she is and looks out the window, focused on the mission. The train keeps moving at high speed but suddenly stops, leaving Sana's father and the rest of the people in a panic. Sana's father enters the car apologizing for the scare and explains that the path is blocked. Just look at the state of these twisted rails ripped out with bizarre force. The old man warns that they'll have to go on foot, and Raikuto immediately checks the GPS, which shows only an 8-minute walk. Nishi gets a little uneasy about what they might find and decides to form a team of 5 to move ahead, leaving Sakura shocked to be included in the group. Sana's father decides to play hero and says he'll go too to protect the kids, but Nishi shuts that down and asks the old man to wait right there and explains that protecting the people staying on the train is just as important as their mission. The old man gets the message, and they finally leave the tracks behind. Now it's the elite team moving through the city, while Sakura is already complaining of a stomachache from being so nervous, and they enter total darkness, where there's nothing but broken buildings and an eerie silence. Raikuto comments that not even the big city escaped that carnage. Ginkgo goes on full alert, while the blonde kid is already almost pissing himself in fear. Nishi asks where the hell everyone went, but Raikuto freezes when he sees a light coming from a building. The archer and the blonde kid celebrate, thinking they finally found people, and the kid already wants to run over, calling for senpai. But Ginkgo and Raikuto aren't fools, and our protag immediately realizes something is very wrong there. The two of them are completely confused while the MC realizes a whole bunch of things are coming toward them. Out of nowhere, they're surrounded in the alley, and the blonde kid panics because he can't see a thing. Things are about to get ugly. The team ends up completely surrounded by these hooded figures in the middle of the alley, and the blonde kid is practically having a heart attack, trying to figure out what the hell these things are. They're bizarre shadows that don't even have faces. Ginko immediately draws her knife, ready to kill, while Taiga also gets his brass knuckles ready. Nishi readies his arrow. But out of nowhere, some lunatic in a red jacket comes flying at the MC and immediately starts terrorizing them, sending the protag flying. Rikuto can't make sense of that level of strength until a girl appears on the rooftop with a crossbow in hand, ordering the attacker to fall back. The guy in the red jacket pretends he doesn't even hear her, and starts picking at his ear while Akane aims the crossbow with a look that means business. He lets out a mocking little laugh and asks if she wants to fight until someone dies, since to him, only the strongest survive. Nodding in confirmation, the hooded figures just take the scolding. Rikuto's group just watches the clash without understanding anything. The attacker calls them trash and says they're not worth the effort. Then he says he'll retreat for today and disappears among the buildings. Akane lets out a sigh of relief when she sees the attackers are gone and stares at the group with a far from friendly look. She throws the hook onto the edge and rappels down while Neshi and the kids celebrate, thinking they're saved. But the moment she reaches the ground, our archer tries to be polite and goes to thank her, but she ignores his hand and immediately presses the crossbow under Takeshi's chin. The group freezes on the spot. She calls Takeshi by his full name and bluntly says the world is unfair because people like him always survive. The girl's practically foaming with rage and tells Yamaoka to go to hell while the boy lowers his head and admits she has every right to be furious. But then Akane drops the bombshell that he killed her brother, leaving the rest of the group completely stunned. Yamaoka doesn't even try to explain himself and tells her to finish the job if that's what it takes for her to finally find peace. Just as she's about to shoot, Rikuto steps in and calmly grabs her crossbow. He says the boy is with their group, and the henchmen even try to calm the boss down. Fuyuse arrives and puts a hand on Rikuto's shoulder, asking him to calm down too. Then Akane decides to give them a break and invites everyone to her hideout. Nishi looks a little uneasy and asks if they can really trust her, especially after what happened with Hizaki. But Rikuto decides to trust her. They accept the invitation and start walking, arriving in an area that looks like a shopping center. Akane is shocked that so many people survived under that "Here you guys rule." Kotone and Sakura are already getting all friendly with Akane, while she explains that people there try to help each other. Nishi starts figuring out how the factions work and realizes Sector 1 is the moderates group. But then there's the Predators gang in red, a bunch of scavengers who don't care about anyone. Raikuto says it all reminds him a lot of the old community, and that the moderates only win by numbers. In the end, they live under a forced truce and Sakura is already panicking over how bad things are. But Akane says Sector 2 isn't even the biggest problem, and points to that giant tower dominating the horizon. The ruling class faction is the one truly in charge, controlling all the city's water and food. But then one of the helmeted guys comes running up in total panic, shouting that things have gone bad. Akane immediately readies her crossbow when she hears the elite have shown up to carry out a resource hunt. A desperate scream cuts through the silence and people flee in total panic. The men in suits show up acting all high and mighty and order the monsters to begin the capture. It's pure terror. If a spider that big grabbed me, I'd accept my fate on the spot. Harpies fly off with survivors while demons load people into trucks. The guy in the suit even says outright that no one is allowed to die because humans are now valuable resources. Nishi can't believe people are using monsters to hunt other people. Sakura and Kaldon are horrified by this new level of cruelty. Akane explains that they take people to a containment facility. Rikuto asks what's going on and immediately jumps through the window. Fuyuse grabs him by the arm because down below the creatures are already rounding everyone up. She begs the MC not to be reckless while he says no one's going to be killed right now. Rikuto takes a deep breath and apologizes for losing his cool. Akane says they need to run and tells everyone to get out. She tells the rest of the group to head for the shelters. Akane gets straight to the point and asks if the trio is willing to stand guard while the civilians run to safety. Nishi agrees right away and Teki just watches with his arms crossed. She gives the signal for everyone to do whatever it takes and the scramble begins. The helmeted enforcers guide the crowd through the chaos while Rikuto is already up front smashing goblins with a pipe and realizes that if they don't stop them now, the creatures will never end. Nishi arrives saying the evacuation was a success. Fuyase warns that the main horde is coming and the sight is enough to chill anyone to the bone. Nishi stammers that it's impossible to hold all that back, and Akane orders an immediate retreat. But the archer suddenly freezes because he heard a voice he knows all too well. He remembers Tuka right as he sees a giant ogre holding the girl while she screams for help in the middle of the chaos. Nishi goes into complete shock, calling her name while Rikuto has no idea what's going on. Nishi loses it and runs off like a madman, screaming his sister's name. And when Rikuto calls him out for abandoning the position he himself ordered him to hold, he tells the protagonist to shut up while the rest of the group watches in shock. He explains that he has an adoptive sister and that he can't abandon her, even if they're not related by blood. The kid ignores the danger and throws himself alone into the middle of the horde, swearing he'll save the girl. Just as luck, the poor guy comes face to face with this red-eyed minotaur. Man, I'd have had a heart attack already. Right then he realizes he screwed up and already accepts that it's the end of the line. And just as the beast is about to finish him off, a flash blinds everyone. Out of nowhere, blood sprays everywhere and lands on the ground right in front of Nishi. Tekshi appears out of nowhere to save the day and immediately starts beating the hell out of the Minotaur. His brass knuckles are insanely badass. He holds the beast back by the chest and lets out a roar, telling the kid to wake the hell up. While Nishi cries in guilt, Takeshi shows his mangled hand and says the mistake has already been made, but if he really wants to save his sister, Rikuto gives the kid one final push to focus on the mission. Nishi watches Akane from afar while she tortures herself over her brother's death, but she quickly tells the group to head to the base. Sector 1's shelter is basically a building under construction, and once inside, she thanks the crew for preventing an even bigger massacre. But the mood is nowhere near victorious. Nishi clenches his fist, thinking about his sister, who's still missing. Rikuto asks if the central sector is really using the monsters as weapons, because until now, we thought they were just some random invading force, but the truth seems way more bizarre, and the name of the bastard behind all of this is Kurogane Kuroto. The revelation leaves the whole group in shock. Just look at the hatred in Ginko's eyes when she hears that name. Kotone can't even hide her terror. Akane sees that the atmosphere has gotten seriously heavy, and Rikuto comes clean that the guy is his cousin. He wants to know exactly what Kuroto did. The leader explains that the city now has a new owner. Basically, all those bizarre monsters now obey that guy's orders. It's some seriously dark stuff. Akane explains that the kidnapping group was just borrowing Kokoto's monsters, and Nishi can't wrap his head around how a human is controlling that pack of creatures. With that army, they've taken over all of Amishima and stationed monsters to watch every corner of the central sector. Sakura is furious that they're hoarding all the food. While Saito starts to panic, she realizes FN Company is right in the snake's nest. Akane says the only option is to accept it and live in fear. But our boy stares her down and says there's no way in hell he's accepting that. Rapid's Kiming. Nishi warns that this isn't the time for personal revenge, but the MC says it straight. Taking down Kuto is the only way everyone survives. The whole group is stunned by what he's saying, as they stare at the food boxes that are almost empty. Without producing anything themselves, it's only a matter of time before everyone's done for. Akane looks away and laments that the former leader would have had the answer to that. The man's name was Shirasaki Genya, but he was captured during a resource hunt. Ginko freezes when she hears the name, and remembers seeing that same man in a hospital before the apocalypse. Ginko remembers her mother in the hospital explaining that Shirasaki was a co-worker. Nishi jumps at our girl's shout in the middle of the base. She confirms that he's the same guy from FN Company. Her mother always used to mention that man's name. What a bizarre coincidence. Rikuto realizes Yukina knew everything and still held on to hope, while Nishi remembers that Kino was mixed up in all of this too. If this Shirasaki knows the truth, we need him. Sakura immediately grabs Akane, asking if he left any trace behind. Akane explains that Shirasaki's PC is locked, and Sakura immediately takes the lead to hack the system. Ice is left completely amazed by our genius girl's skill and the way her fingers fly across the keyboard. She finds something in the files that changes everything, and Rikuto realizes the plan is decided. Meanwhile, in a noisy factory, someone is being sliced apart mercilessly in a brutal massacre. The guy in the red coat is totally unfazed, but loses patience with the screaming and kicks the door open, ready to shut everyone up. Onizawa notices the intrusion and stares down the visitors. Rikuto says they've met again, and the blonde immediately gets excited, thinking it's a surprise attack. He asks if they want another beating and says he'll have fun slicing each of them up. But the MC tells him to listen while she explains that this is about everyone's survival. Nishi notices the trail of blood on the floor and the villain agrees to listen, but threatens to kill everyone if the talk gets boring. Onizawa is kind of thrown off by the proposal and asks if Akane has finally completely lost it. She explains that the plan is to invade the place where the prisoners are being held, while the blonde cleans his ear with the greatest indifference in the world. The real objective is to rescue Shirasaki Genya, since he's the only one who knows what caused the end of the world. Nishi goes cold, remembering he's seen that name before, and then the explanation about the myth summon system comes up. A technology created by FN Company to change the world, but which ended up bringing fantasy monsters into our reality. But because it turns the unreal into reality, the system has a critical flaw. In the middle of all that tension, Sakura nearly fried her brain, trying to open the locked files. Nishi imagines Shirasaki as the Grim Reaper himself, and Ginko grips her necklace, thinking about what her mother was hiding. Akane insists that saving the guy is their only chance against the central sector, and reminds them that their entire stock of food and water is there. She begs for Sector 2's help, but Onizawa gets up from the couch, telling her to cut the crap. Onizawa accepts the challenge with that psychotic smile of his and already warns that he's going to wipe everyone out there. Nishi starts thinking that getting involved with this guy was the biggest mistake ever, and Akane, with enormous talent hidden under her clothes, just gets annoyed by the amateurism. Rikuto just lets out a sigh and asks what the blonde is so afraid of. He says it straight and asks if the villain is scared of the central sector, calling the guy pathetic right to his face. The protagonist asks what his plan is for this world infested with monsters, and Onizawa replies that his thing is just robbing the weak, period. The truth is, civilization is done for, and everything is falling apart fast, and the henchmen can already feel that food is running short, making our boy warn them that the only way is to unite, and Onizawa is pissed. But alone he can't take on the central sector, so the MC asks what he's going to do. The scene shifts to this abandoned factory where the gang gets ready while some people keep watch over everything, and one of the guys says the move was a masterstroke since Onizawa admits he never expected this alliance proposal. Onizawa's henchmen are already in the mood for war, and ask if the boss is ready for the blood festival, but he's not in the mood to talk and vents his rage by landing a hard punch on his subordinate, telling the trash to shut up while the guy cowers on the floor. He storms out, slamming the door, and starts losing it by himself in the hallway. He thinks about the protagonist and the monsters while freaking out, shouting that he hates every second of this situation. Then someone says he seems pretty stressed. But in the middle of his breakdown, this guy appears, and Onizawa asks who the hell this lunatic is, calling him by name so casually. The guy simply introduces himself as Kurogane Kuto. The villain looks Onizawa over as if he were picking out meat and bluntly says that even though he looks stupid, his physique will do. With that cynical smile, he says he's going to put the brute to work, telling the gorilla to be grateful for being useful. Onizawa is trembling with rage while the other guy laughs in his face. Then he finally snaps and tries to hit Kuto.